This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate second and final part of What If Kid Naruto became Sannin and gained a Phoenix contract. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Kurenai had just finished lunch with the other members of her rookie Genin team. Kiba and Shino believed that the food in a place like this wouldn't be regarded as much of a food when they first arrived. It makes sense why they haven't visited this location. This was a place for the typical chunin or civilians. They had no choice but to eat food from such a dirty place, even though their clan would never permit it. Since they accepted their sensei's invitation without fully understanding the type of establishment they were being escorted to, they were forced to eat here. For her part, Hinata had visited this location previously and dined with a friend from her academy when she was very young. She would visit this location at least twice or 3 times per month after being introduced to it. Therefore, if she was aware of what her teammates were thinking, her perception of this place wasn't as horrible. Kiba and Shino had an instant change of heart about this place and the food after tasting ramen for the first time. This was by far the best ramen they had ever tasted. After nearly inhaling the ramen for 5 minutes, Kiba finished and turned to face their sensei, who was halfway through her bowl. His teammates were on the verge of finishing theirs. All 3 genin thanked the elderly man when they were done and turned to face their sensei. Hinata said, "Arigato sensei," for the meal. Shino and Kiba simply nodded their gratitude, which Kurenai gladly accepted. Kurenai said, "You 3 better get going, but before you go don't forget our meeting at the tower." The 3 nodded. "We won't forget it sensei, we'll be getting our first mission so of course we'll be there," declared Kiba. He hoped that his first mission would involve fighting a foreign ninja, and he was very excited about it. Shino began to say goodbye to his soon-to-be comrades, saying, "If we are done here I will be taking my leave." "Hey Hinata-chan, do you mind if I walk you home?" Kiba asked, turning to Hinata after glancing at Shino as he was leaving. When he asked, Hinata flushed and began to stab her fingers together. Softly, Hinata stammered, "Sure Kiba-kun." For quite some time, she harbored feelings for Kiba, but she was never able to express them. Since he was 14 years old, Kiba had feelings for Hinata. When she agreed to let him walk her home, he was overjoyed. As she and Kiba began to make their way toward the Hyuga complex, Hinata said, "Bye sensei." Kurenai sighed and waved her hand at them, saying aloud to no one in particular, "Ah, young love." Kurenai was startled when someone whispered in her ears, "Speaking of young love, do I still have the time to make up the other half of our date?" She cursed herself for not even noticing the person approaching from behind. Although she could have inferred who it was based on what was whispered to her, she slowly turned around to see. She turned to the figure, fighting off a flush that was beginning to creep up her face. The sight of the figure made her blush uncontrollably. The person appeared to be some kind of wingless angle as the sunlight shone off him. Kurenai went into Hinata mode and said, Naruto. Sama, what are you doing here?" The reason behind her stuttering was not entirely clear to Naruto. He was somewhat dim-witted about women, even though he was regarded as a shinobi genius. "What, am I not allowed to come here?" Naruto asked jokingly, trying to put on his best smile. For asking him that, Kurenai gave herself a mental slap. He will now believe that she is just another dim-witted woman, or worse, a fangirl. The young blonde looked directly at the stunning Kunoichi and said, "You still haven't answered my question." Kurenai was so stunned that she couldn't remember what Naruto had asked her. Panic set in and she began to perspire on her forehead. Then she thought of a quick way to get him to ask again. "Ahem. Well, if you ask me again I might answer the question right now. If not you'll have to wait, Naruto." "Sama," Kurenai replied calmly. At this, Naruto's eyebrows went up. She asked him to repeat the question, but why? Unless she forgot about it, Naruto thought, laughing. Kurenai looked at him curiously. "What's so funny? You forgot my question, didn't you?" Naruto smirked slyly. Kurenai blushed in shame and turned her head away from him, nodding slowly and hesitantly. With his famous foxy smile, the blonde repeated, "Well then, I will ask again. Is there still time to make up the other half of our date?" Kurenai blushed again and asked, "What do you have in mind, Naruto?" "Sama. Damn it, I have to stop with this blushing or my head is going to explode," she thought. In response to her question, Naruto grinned and assumed that she said, "Yes," but he still wanted to make sure he was not mistaken. "So I take that as a yes?" he asked, receiving a nod before continuing. "I was hoping we could maybe go for a walk in a park, so if you would lead the way to your favorite one." Kurenai tensed slightly, then nodded as she began walking toward Eastern Park in Konoha. Since she enjoys romantic things like this and wanted to date a romantic guy who would occasionally do things like that rather than just try to get her, she thought it was a pretty good idea. She hoped Naruto wasn't like that, Kami. When she finally made the decision to let someone in, she didn't want her heart to be broken because she was beginning to feel something for him. Naruto's gaze was fixed on the heavens. There were no clouds in the sky, and the day was bright and sunny. He wanted to take the red-eyed beauty to his special spot to watch the sunset, and the day was ideal for it. When they reached their destination, Naruto pointed Kurenai in the direction of an empty bench. Both of them sat down and gazed at the sky. Kurenai cut Naruto off as he was about to say something, trying to think of a way to establish a conversation. Kurenai began to reminisce, her eyes glazed. You know, I used to come to this place with my parents when I was young. They used to take me here when they were on missions, and I would play with my parents and we would spend half the day here having fun. One day, I felt a huge amount of chakra all over Konoha, so my parents told me to go home and wait so they could find out where that evil chakra was coming from. I waited and waited, but they never returned, and a day later Kyuubi attacked Konoha. From that day on, I never went to the park because it brought back so many memories. Kurenai was on the verge of tears as she expressed her thoughts for the first time in a long time, as only her best friend Anko was aware of this. Naruto was listening to everything she had to say about her life. It made him feel foolish to have brought her here. He ought to have inquired about her desire to attend. He was now causing her to cry. Since he was unsure of what to do in such a situation, he didn't really want to watch her cry. As a result, he took the only action he knew could resolve this delicate situation. He held her against his chest. When Kurenai felt Naruto embrace her, she initially tensed up, but she soon began to relax and cry, which only made Naruto feel worse. He didn't want to make her cry, he wanted to help her feel better. Kurenai sobbed uncontrollably for the next 20 minutes while Naruto held her. A few couples in the park were glaring at Naruto for causing a woman to cry. The glares were made worse by Naruto's sheepish smile. He chose to disregard it and did his best to console Kurenai. She wiped her tears and left Naruto's embrace after she had calmed down. While still dabbing at her gorgeous red eyes, Kurenai said, I am sorry Naruto. Sama for breaking down on you like that. Naruto interrupted with a slight smile, saying, it was my fault for bringing you here and for not taking into consideration your feelings. You shouldn't be the one apologizing Kurenai-san. At this, Kurenai shook her head. Kurenai said, it's not your fault. I decided to come here. I just have to leave the past behind me sometime, so I can start anew, and I guess today is as good as ever. Naruto got to his feet, perplexing Kurenai. Then he grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the Hokage monument, saying, since this place is depressing, why don't I take you to one of my favorite places in Konoha? It took them just over 10 minutes to reach the summit, and the sun would set in about 20 minutes. Naruto wanted to show Kurenai what the monument's interior looked like, so he didn't want to shunshin up there. It was a quiet experience for Kurenai. She had never been inside the monument, much less on top of it. The interior was flooded with various hues of light. She was eager to see what the view looked like from a higher vantage point in Konoha. A sudden gust of wind struck them both as they reached the summit, causing Kurenai to flinch in fear. She surmised that the height difference was probably the cause. It felt wonderful to close her eyes and take in the fresh air. She was so beautiful that Naruto couldn't help admiring her. She appeared even more stunning than before. He couldn't help but feel sad that he might not be able to make her happy or be happy with her because her serene face looked like the face of an angel. Since they are the main source of that person's misery, how can anyone make them happy? To dispel these thoughts, Naruto shook his head. That wasn't something he needed to worry about now. He can only hope because only time will tell what will happen in the future. Naruto tapped Kurenai on the shoulder to get her to open her eyes after noticing that they were still closed. After giving him a perplexed glance, she noticed Naruto pointing at something. Her eyes widened at what she saw as she followed his finger. In all her life, she had likely never seen a more exquisite scene. The sun appeared to be a vast ocean of orange flame because it was so much larger. The rest of Konoha was visible to her as well. From above, people appeared to be ants, and the majority of it was covered in pink and green. She didn't think it would be so beautiful. It was breathtaking. Amazing, isn't it? Is what Naruto asked. Kurenai gave him only a nod in response. Naruto could infer from the expression on her face that she was unable to speak. Who wouldn't be when they're gazing at a beautiful sight, after all? Kurenai inquired, can we stay here until it's dark? She hoped to spend more time with Naruto, enjoy their time together, and perhaps even learn more about him. After Naruto nodded to her, they spent the next half hour taking in the scenery and chatting to learn more about one another. Looking at Kurenai, Naruto asked, ready to go? Gazing into his azure eyes, she responded, hi. Then, like Naruto, they got up. In order to stay on the ground, both parties collected chakra before sprinting down Hokage Mountain. In order to keep up with Kurenai, Naruto had to significantly slow down his pace. Slowly, they strolled back to Kurenai's apartment side by side. They soon reached a three-story building, where Kurenai quickly embraced Naruto, causing both Naruto and Kurenai to blush. To avoid stuttering, say, "Arigato Naruto. Sama for tonight," quickly but cautiously. "I did request you not to call me Sama, right?" scowled Naruto. "Ah Gomen, how does Naruto-san sound?" Kurenai quickly said she was sorry. She blushed at the meaning of Naruto's wink after he gave her a cunning smirk and said, "That's Finia for now." After observing Kurenai nod in an attempt to conceal her blush, Naruto bowed and said, "This was a great night. Oh, and don't bother looking for me for a while, I won't be in Konoha for few weeks." He then hurriedly opened the door to her building, turned back to Naruto, and bid him good night. Before leaving, he took in the view as he watched Kurenai ascend the stairs and enter her house. He decided to take a nap after getting home, so he threw himself onto the bed and fell asleep without a dream. With Kurenai an hour later, Kurenai had just opened the bathroom door and entered the hallway after taking a shower, with a towel wrapped around her body to barely cover her assets, when she felt a high Junin-level chakra signature in the bedroom. When it felt familiar, she relaxed after tensing up a bit. As she entered her room, she noticed Anko, her best friend, eating dango while seated on the bed. As she walked over to her dresser, the wet, red-eyed beauty asked inquisitively, "Anko, I thought you were on a mission?" As she stuffed her mouth with dango, Anko said, "It was an easy mission." With a playful twinkle in her eye, the seductive Kunoichi said, "So I finished early and decided to crash at your place." She then inquired, "So anyway, how was your day?" "It went pretty good," Kurenai remarked as she dug through her clothing. "Kakashi's and my team passed. After that Naruto and I went on the other half of our date, so overall it was a great day." "So are you considering going on another date?" Anko narrowed her eyes, possibly out of jealousy. Kurenai joked, "But only about the last part. Yep, and if everything works out, I might even consider giving him my virginity on our fourth date." Kurenai's announcement that she was going on another date made Anko a little depressed. Even though she should be pleased that her friend may have at last found happiness, she couldn't help but worry that she will be kicked out of Kurenai's life when it does. She would then be left alone and forced to return to her loneliness. Anko placed her dango on the table next to the bed and got up, deciding to return to her carefree self. Then, smiling, she approached Kurenai and said, "Don't do anything with him that I wouldn't." Kurenai smirked and shot back, "And what might that be?" But Anko vanished without a reply. Next morning at 8 a.m., on their first mission as ninjas, Team 7 and Team 8 stood before the Hokage with their sensei. Amino Iruka, the new Genin's former academy teacher and his assistant, was standing next to the Hokage. He was organizing mission profiles before handing the Hokage a file that included multiple D-ranked missions. The Hokage then went through a number of mission lists, none of which the Genin found particularly appealing, but since it was their first mission, some of them refrained from objecting. Following the distribution of the day's mission, Hokage glared at Sasuke. With a frustrated tone, the elderly man said, "Now, to receive your punishment for stealing the Forbidden Scroll, Sasuke." This idiot caused him to have more paperwork, and he met with the council to determine the appropriate punishment for the Uchiha. Elders felt that Sarutobi's demand for a meeting with Ibiki was excessive, so they came up with a less drastic solution. After your team mission, you'll be subjected to one extra D-ranked mission every day by yourself for the next 2 months. When Sasuke learned of his punishment, he grinned to himself. He was aware that they couldn't possibly punish him. He pondered what kind of punishment he would receive if he killed someone who was loyal to Konoha, particularly that Uzumaki idiot, if this is the punishment he received for stealing a valuable item from the Hokage's office. A grin appeared on his lips, but it vanished as soon as he heard Hokage's subsequent remarks. Sarutobi sucked on his pipe and smiled as he concluded, "Without pay." For a few seconds, Sasuke's expression remained neutral before changing to one of rage, before the room's temperature dropped a few degrees as Sarutobi unleashed part of his killer intent on Sasuke, making it difficult for him to breathe. Sasuke's irate cry, "What? You can't do that," reverberated throughout the space. During the entire ordeal, nobody spoke. Even Sakura was afraid for her Sasuke-kun. They did not want to face the Hokage's wrath of all people. After all, this was the Hokage, one of the most formidable ninja in the entire shinobi world and the strongest in the village. Sarutobi glared menacingly at the haughty young Uchiha, asking, "Are you telling me, the Hokage, what to do?" Sasuke attempted to reply, but he was pinned to the wall by none other than Hitaki Kakashi before he could finish the sentence. As his icy gaze fell on Sasuke, Kakashi whispered, "Now you listen to me, Sasuke, and listen carefully. If you are trying to anger the Hokage, then I suggest you stop or you'll regret it. Do you understand me?" Sasuke nodded in understanding, painfully. After telling him to apologize to the Hokage, Kakashi released him. Reluctantly, Sasuke approached Hokage's desk and bowed his head slightly before saying, gritting his teeth, "I am sorry, Hokage Sama, for disrespecting you." Sarutobi accepted the apology even though he could tell Sasuke didn't mean it because he didn't want to deal with him. The Hokage dismissed the young ninja in front of him and said, "Kurenai and Genin are dismissed, but I would like to discuss something with Kakashi before you go." The Genin nodded and left the office after Kakashi gave him a quick glance. He spoke while turning to face the Hokage. "What do you need, Hokage Sama?" Sarutobi stated bluntly, "I think you already know what I am going to ask of you, Kakashi." Nodded Kakashi. "You want me to report on Sasuke's mental state from time to time. Is that right, Hokage Sama?" "Yes, as much as I hate to admit it, there is definitely some damage from Tsukuyomi still left behind. He could snap anytime, so I want you to keep him in control, and if that can't be done, then you know what must be done. Is that understood?" said the elderly Kage in a gloomy voice. Kakashi bowed and vanished in a cloud of smoke to accompany his team on their first mission, saying, "Hi, Hokage Sama." Sarutobi let out a deep sigh and turned back to the window he had been gazing out of, hoping that someone would take over his job soon. He could see the mountains beyond the rooftops. Someone gave me this. After several weeks, Naruto was in Suna, looking into the whereabouts of their loyal allies. His only conclusion thus far was that Suna was forming an alliance with the recently established Sound Village, along with a few other intriguing details. A few days ago, their self-proclaimed Otokage arrived to complete the deal. Naruto had to view the Otokage from a distance and had not yet been able to see his face clearly, but based on what he could see, he appeared to be around 20 years old. This is not old for a Kage, but then again, Naruto was only 12 when he was given the title of Sannin, so it wasn't a huge deal. He had to fire his informant, who would periodically visit and update him on any developments, due to the Kage's appearance in Suna. He recalled meeting her for the first time a week ago in Suna and rewind. At the moment, Naruto was walking down Suna's congested street. Unlike Konoha, he didn't receive any glares from civilians as he passed by, and the sights were rather pleasant. Furthermore, there were no fervent fangirls vying for his virginity. The latter resulted from the genjutsu he applied to himself. He was fairly certain that he would be instantly recognizable to any Junin or other ninja from the villages who watched the bingo books. You don't see a blonde S-rank shinobi very often. Furthermore, he resembled the deceased Yondaime Hokage of Konoha. He used one of his best genjutsu to hide his appearance in order to avoid all of that. He had not yet been found, which was fortunate for him because there weren't many genjutsu masters wandering around Suna. He or she was masking their chakra level to that of an academy student when he or she felt a vaguely familiar chakra signature following them. He was impressed. It has been roughly a year since he last saw this individual. This individual was only on par with a typical Konoha Chunin at the time. However, she might now be able to defeat a low to mid-level Junin. He smiled as he made his way to an alley and thought, she's getting pretty good. He looked around to make sure there were no shinobi nearby, but when he nodded his head, she suddenly materialized in front of him, keeping a safe distance to ensure their safety. Naruto Sama, a female voice, raspy, greeted the women. Her body was toned and slender, and she wore black boots and Anbu style clothing as she looked around her 20s. On top of that was a forehead protector over her left bicep and a Chunin flak jacket designed for Suna's shinobi. She wore a mask over her face to conceal who she was, but Naruto had seen her before, so he didn't need to do that. Her hair was styled in a coronet of neat braids that framed her face with a bang just above her left eye, allowing long strands of silky chocolate brown hair to fall out. Under that fa section aid, she was quite attractive, and he assumed that her beauty had only increased since their last encounter. Naruto said with a smile, "Ohio Komiko-san, been a long time, hasn't it?" How he could even remember her name, let alone recognize her, baffled her. She was unaware that he had a strong memory and could quickly identify anyone by their chakra signature. After clearing her head, she answered with an uncertain, "Hi." Within seconds, Naruto's expression had changed from one of joy to one of solemnity. Naruto asked, "Anything worthy enough to report?" And his spy nodded. "Hi Naruto Sama. It seems the Otokage is coming to finalize their alliance. He should be here in a few days with an Anbu platoon. The Anbu from Konoha seem to be helping the Oto Nin get out of Suna while they stay behind and cover Oto's tracks. The same Anbu also have been spotted around Rice Country, usually led inside the village by a couple of Chunin. According to my sources, they seem to be planning something big, but I haven't figured out what that is. I'm sorry, Komiko continued. Naruto indicated that everything was alright by waving his hands in front of his face. He genuinely didn't believe she would be able to solve every problem. For some reason, spying is also difficult when Konoha Anbu are present. And he'll discover. Do you know why Suna would ally with Otto without letting Konoha know? Do you know about the one-tailed Shukaku? She asked after catching her breath and nodding. Naruto's nod provided her with the answer, so she went on. You see, Shukaku was said to originate here, having been created from the spirit of a dead monk who was trapped in a tea kettle. With its military forces being scaled down by the Land of Wind's feudal lord, the Yondaime Kazekage realized that they had to increase the quality of each ninja to maintain a strong enough military force. So he got the elder named Shio to seal the demon inside his son when his wife was in labor, causing her to die from the demon feasting on her soul. Naruto trembled when he heard her say that he wished his mother didn't have to endure such agony. As more time passed, the Lord started commissioning Konoha with requests he should have been making to Sanagakure. On top of that, he began cutting back on Sanagakure's budget. The Kazekage realized that if he didn't act quickly, Sanagakure would be in danger of disappearing, so I guess that is why he joined forces with Otogakure Ina. While she was speaking, Naruto's eyes widened when came to him. So they want to destroy Konoha in hopes that without them in the way the Lord would have to re-establish the Suna military forces after seeing their power, Naruto replied. When Komiko noticed Naruto clenching his fist and tensing his body, she flinched back a little and responded, "Hi. That would be our best bet." He thought resolutely, there is no way I am going to let that happen. I think you did more than enough. For now I want you to lay low until the Otokage leaves. Do what you usually would do and maybe go on missions. Remember not to do anything unusual, suggested Naruto with a serious expression. He sincerely hoped his informant would not suffer any harm. He views them as valuable allies in addition to the fact that they work for him. He also swore to defend them if necessary. They were under contract to serve as his spies, so essentially, if you mess with his spies, you'll die painfully. Komiko nodded and held off on saying anything more, unsure whether to do so because she didn't want to provide inaccurate information. Her instinct as a girl gave her the impression that there was a strong force of perversion out there, but it was only a hunch. She said, "Anyo, I think Jiraiya Sama is currently in Suna." Naruto's interest in her suddenly increased. Her face turned slightly pink with embarrassment as she concluded with a nervous smile. "I've seen a white mane of hair beside the bathhouse. I am not sure if it's him, but I feel something perverse in the air." After learning about Ero Sannin, Naruto laughed. If she saw the hair anywhere close to the bathhouse, he was fairly certain it was him. Then he sensed someone or something. His voice echoed through the alley as he said, "Leave, someone is nearby." Naruto began to disappear from view. Without wasting any time, Komiko left the place. A shinobi wearing a Junin flak jacket emerged in the alley a few seconds later, scanning the area to see if anyone was there. That's strange, he thought, because I was fairly certain someone was here. Kuso. Tamari is going to kill me if I am late again for the team meeting. He muttered under his breath as he hurriedly ran after looking at the time and his single eye widened. Flashback end. Since then, Naruto has occasionally searched the bathhouse for Ero Sannin. Nevertheless, he never once saw the Toad Sage. It's possible that Jiraiya was either hiding extremely well or that he had never been in Suna in the first place. However, he was growing weary of searching for Jiraiya, so he made the decision to intensify his search today. There was nothing Jiraiya could do to avoid his attention. Naruto spent the next 3 hours searching for Jiraiya and even attempting to find his chakra signature, but was unsuccessful. The civilian stared at Naruto as if he were insane when he said aloud, "Now where would I be if I was a pervert?" Naruto laughed nervously and scratched the back of his head, a flush creeping up his cheeks. His mind made a connection. Then, unable to believe that he was actually asking someone where the brothel was, he approached a storekeeper and said, "Anyo, do you know where the brothel is?" The man pointed to the location while giving Naruto a perverted giggle. With a sigh, Naruto asked himself, are all men perverts? As he approached the location slowly, Naruto was taken aback by what he saw when he arrived. For a place where men go to have sex, the place's exterior was incredibly elegant. He would have assumed that this location would be filthy and undoubtedly in a bad area, but instead he found one of Suna's cleanest areas. As he entered, he noticed a few men forming a line in front of a woman who was distributing a piece of paper with numbers on it. He quickly scanned the group of men and found the person he was seeking. As he approached the figure, Naruto lifted his right hand and placed it on Jiraiya's head. The renowned pervert didn't even notice Naruto until he was struck because he was so engrossed in his own twisted world. Jiraiya's head ached suddenly, causing him to yell. Looking to his right, he saw an unidentified individual standing next to him with one hand up, and an angry expression came to his face. Jiraiya took a quick step back and looked at the individual. He appeared to be concealed by genjutsu of some sort. Jiraiya would have attempted to refute it, but he needed to be cautious because he was too close to the stranger. "Who are you?" Jiraiya snarled bellowingly. He could not possibly let this person go without punishing them in some way for ruining his fun. Naruto grinned. Jiraiya didn't appear to be the kind to lose her temper easily. Oh, how he enjoyed making Jiraiya feel uncomfortable. Naruto pouted and said, "First, that was for wasting my time looking for you. Second, don't you remember me, Arrow? Sannin?" Arrow. Sannin, Jiraiya asked himself a question. Naruto was the first to give him this nickname. He would never mention that name to anyone else, so this individual must be. Nah. Naruto, stammered Jiraiya. In Suna, what would Naruto be doing? Jiraiya's question was answered by Naruto's nod. Then he gestured for Jiraiya to come after him. Initially reluctant, Jiraiya agreed to accompany him for the time being. After checking to see if anyone was nearby when they were outside, Naruto put a hand on Jiraiya's shoulder and flamed Sunshine to his hotel room. Jiraiya swiftly grabbed Naruto's shoulder as soon as they entered his room and pleaded, "You've got to teach me how to do that, please." Using puppy eye jutsu. He thought, looking at Naruto, "Ohuhoho. Ladies will be all over me if I learn that." He smiled pervertedly. Naruto was completely terrified. When a girl performed that jutsu, it was one thing, but it was just plain frightening to witness a grown man perform it. Jiraiya's hands were swatted off Naruto's shoulder. Naruto said, "Sorry, it's one of the benefits of having Phoenix as your summon." It broke Jiraiya's heart. He hurried to the corner of the room and began to brood while making circles on the floor after all of his plans fell through. He wished he had the Phoenix summon right now rather than those unsightly overgrown toads. Naruto began to perspire. It appears that the Baka has forgotten that Naruto brought him here to converse rather than to mope. Naruto caught Jiraiya's attention by clearing his throat and saying, "Ahem." Jiraiya glanced at Naruto as he dropped the genjutsu. When Jiraiya saw Naruto's appearance, his eyes widened. Naruto bore a striking resemblance to both his father and Minato, his former pupil. The striking resemblance was accentuated by the cape Naruto was wearing. He would have thought Naruto was the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha if he hadn't already realized that this was the Ryu Sannin. The old toad sage was shocked at how foolish some people were at the time for failing to see the link between the two. Startled out of his thoughts, the pervert approached the queen Sai's bed and sat roughly on it to unwind, asking, "What is it you need to talk to me about, Naruto?" Jiraiya gathered his thoughts, and Naruto's eyes followed. "I need to talk to you about this alliance with Suna and this newly formed village Otto," replied Naruto. Jiraiya winced indiscernibly before going silent for a moment to reflect. After finishing his thought, he sighed and said, "Tell me what you know and I will continue from there." Naruto grinned at that. Perhaps he wouldn't need to search for information after all. As Jiraiya processed the information, Naruto said solemnly, Let's see. I know that there are Anbu from Konoha present in Suna, helping the Otto Nin. The reason for the alliance is due to the Wind Country's lord cutting their military budget. Also, I think both villages are planning an invasion on Konoha. With the exception of the invasion part, he was fully aware of that. He didn't have a long-term outlook. Furthermore, given that Konoha and Suna were allies, he didn't believe he would require a spy, so it's not like he had one in Suna. With a detached expression, Jiraiya said, "It seems like you know practically everything, so what do you want to know from me?" Naruto asked directly and concisely, "Do you know anything about those Anbu and the Otokage?" Hearing the latter, Jiraiya moved in his chair. Then he laughed, drawing a perplexed glance. He chose to make fun of Naruto by saying, "You know for a Sannin, you sure don't know much about Konoha's military." As a tick mark formed on his forehead, Naruto threateningly asked, "Are you going to give me an answer or should I beat it out of you and you know I can?" Jiraiya waved a protective hand in front of him, then muttered something about how teens these days always turn to violence rather than bribery. Ma, no need to get violent. Those are not one of your regular Anbu units, Gaki. They are called Ne, created by Danzo. He trained and conditioned children intensively from a very young age. This was done to completely eliminate emotions and enable its members to complete missions without being held back. They're like machines, no emotion, and no attachment to anyone. They are also loyal only to Danzo. Jiraiya took a deep breath before continuing, as for the cage, it is my ex-teammate Orochimaru. What Naruto heard shocked him. His voice was raised as he exclaimed, "What? That's preposterous," he exclaimed. "He doesn't even look like he's 20. Which made Jiraiya sigh. He really didn't want to discuss specifics, but he feels compelled to. "Naruto, I have been keeping tabs on him for quite some time. And believe me when I say this, it's Orochimaru. He created this jutsu that grants him immortality. He will never grow old or die of a natural cause," Jiraiya said. For a time, neither of them spoke. In reality, Naruto was assimilating all of the information that Jiraiya had just provided him. It was more than he had anticipated learning, he had to admit. To break the silence, the pervert said, "So did you lose your virginity yet?" The question caused Naruto to flush. It appears that Jiraiya has reverted to his pervertish ways, which is not surprising given that he is the renowned author of the Icha Icha series. He stammered, "Why would you ask that?" which made Jiraiya smile. The old perverted sage frowned and said, "I see you haven't. What prevented his sensei from turning such a talented shinobi into a pervert? Not doing so was a crime." Jiraiya chuckled perversely and said, "Well, if I were in your body, I would have already deflowered every woman in Fire Nation." Naruto trembled when he imagined Jiraiya inside him. As he continued to shudder at the images racing through his mind, Naruto muttered, "Well, I am glad you are not." Jiraiya got out of bed, went to the door, and turned to face Naruto. He said, "I will be leaving to my holy sanctuary now, if there is nothing else, but before I go." He took 3 copies of Icha Icha out of his pocket and gave them to Naruto. Jiraiya concluded with a twisted laugh, "Give one to Kakashi-san and Sarutobi-sensei. You should keep the other one for inspiration when you finally decide to lose it, he. Despite his disgusted expression, Naruto chose to keep it. Who knows, perhaps it will be useful. Then he saw himself in a precarious situation with Kurenai. Oh my god, what am I thinking? Even though he really liked the mental images, Naruto tried to push them away. When he saw the tiny drop of blood fall from Naruto's nose, the perverted hermit laughed. There is still a chance to convert the child to the ways of the super pervert, as it appears that he did have a perverted side after all. The old pervert thought. Next he heard Naruto mutter, "Whatever," as he left the room, followed by a thud that meant the door was closing. In the evening, Naruto made the quick decision to head for Konoha after speaking with Jiraiya. As a result, he slept well and spent the night traveling to Konoha. He ran for 10 minutes at a pace that only a cage could match before he stopped when he heard a woman yell for assistance. He fled in the direction of the voice because it sounded familiar, and what he saw infuriated him. At least 15 Anbu were attempting to exploit a young woman, and worse, she just so happened to be Komiko, his informant. She had minor cuts all over her body and some bruises. The majority of her body was still covered by her torn clothing. An Anbu pinned her down while making a valiant effort to undress her. Komiko was yelling at the top of her lungs, pleading for assistance from anyone. Naruto directed a significant amount of his killing intent at the group, immobilizing them, because he could not bear to watch any more of these idiots attempt to desecrate his informant. Even the ostensibly emotionless Nei were trembling a little as their bodies froze completely, trembling in terror at the unreal killer intent. It seemed to them that their deaths were predetermined. As it took all of their willpower not to simply cut their own throats, some of the weaker Anbu fell to their knees. Those who managed to move even a little bit turned their heads slowly in the direction of the murderer's intended target. Komiko sighed in relief as she raised her head slightly to see what had caused her attackers to halt and caught a glimpse of someone in her hazy vision. She only saw a white trench coat and blonde hair, and based on the expressions on the Auto Nin's faces, she assumed it was someone very powerful. At the time, she only thought of one person. Muted, Naruto. "Sama?" she said. "Is that you?" she asked before she passed out. A figure standing roughly 100 feet away from them caught everyone's attention. His red and blonde hair appeared to cover half of his face, but his eyes were still visible. An expression that promised agonizing pain in a not.so. Sudden death was fixed in his cold blue eyes. They were the eyes of someone who could swat them like insects, the eyes of a shinobi who had killed innumerable people. Those cold blue eyes were the source of the heinous murderous intent that had them paralyzed. Suddenly, a tremendous amount of visible purple chakra swirled violently around the figure, shooting nearly 50 feet in the air in the shape of a phoenix, and sand began to float off the ground and the wind started to blow. Before the chakra phoenix calmed down and began circling him like a tornado, he let out a powerful war cry. The wind combined with the sand created a violent sandstorm, and the entire desert started to tremble. It was oppressive how much chakra was swirling around the figure. Even a few cages would be dwarfed by the amount of raw chakra present. Such power. The Anbu captain shielded his eyes from the approaching dust and mentally gasped. It seems like we could die with just one mistake. What on earth is he? Previously, Komiko was chewing on a stick of Pocky as he strolled down Suna's deserted street. Out of the corner of her eye, she suddenly noticed movement. Upon closer inspection, she noticed a group of Anbu racing toward the valley that led outside Suna. She followed them, keeping her distance, determined to see what they were up to. As the ninja turned, she saw the tattoo on his arm, and after a few minutes of traveling, she saw one of them glance back as though he sensed her. It was a note of music, encircled by what looked like a snake. She hurried to hide behind a building. Not seeing anything, the nin followed his team until they stopped at Suna's check.in station at the end of the village's narrow passageway. The Chunin, who was supposed to be watching the gate, was napping when they approached him slowly. One of the Anbu stepped forward and demanded, "Oi, wake up and sign our papers." Komiko assumed he was the group's leader because he was the one who came forward. When he didn't hear back, he sent a murderous message to the stupid ninja, rousing him from his cozy slumber. A platoon of Anbu were staring at him through their masks as he turned to see what had awakened him. He smiled at them and quickly straightened himself. The group's captain glared menacingly at the Suna nin and repeated in an agitated voice, "Sign the damn papers, Chunin." "So you guys are going back, the Suna Chunin asked, failing to notice the irritation in the captain's voice, but before he could finish, the poor man was exposed to the full force of the captain's murderous intent. The Chunin frantically shook his head in fear of his life, but the Auto Anbu captain hissed at him. Now, after signing the traveling papers, he bowed his head in some respect to the shinobi who could kill him in a matter of seconds. When Komiko witnessed what was happening in the entrance, she became disgusted. Even though that guy was a fool for taking a nap while on duty, those auto ninjas didn't seem to respect anyone. She was even more repulsed by Chunin's head. Bowing display of filth. She was startled out of her reverie and began to follow them for a quarter to an hour. The dumb sand in this vast desert were really starting to irritate her. She never liked the place, despite being a Suna shinobi. In addition to slowing you down, it forces you to use chakra to keep your feet from getting buried. Suna wasn't very energetic. There are very few trees, and occasionally the majority of people avoid leaving their homes out of concern that Shukaku will eat them in his sand. Since Gaara, the son of the Yondaime Kazekage, has already become what they have always feared, it doesn't matter that they couldn't even tell the difference between a child and a demon. Because Komiko was so preoccupied, she failed to notice that 3 Anbu were switching to a Bunshin while the others continued to use their comrades' Bunshin to avoid suspicion. Komiko suddenly heard a sound piercing the atmosphere. As she barely avoided a swipe from someone's blade, she thought, shit. She glanced around and saw a number of Anbu standing with their swords drawn in their respective stances. "Who are you and why are you following us?" the leader asked in a demanding tone as he moved forward and aimed his blade at her. After a quick moment of ingenuity, Komiko responded, I was on patrol and seeing a squad of another country's Anbu was suspicious, so I decided to check it out." At that, the captain arched an eyebrow. Given that they have been entering and exiting Suna for a considerable amount of time, there was no reason for them to appear suspicious if she was a Suna nin, as she should have been aware of the alliance. He asked, "Are you not aware of our alliance with Suna?" Komiko explained, praying to Kami that they would believe her. "Oh, Otto, yes. I am aware of the alliance, but in the dark I couldn't see clearly, so I assumed that you guys were spies." The captain, who refused to believe a word she said, "I see." He never brought up the fact that they were from Otto, and she also appeared to have shied away from answering his main question about who she was. She was aware that she was pursuing them, but why? Then, as a cunning smirk emerged on his lips beneath the mask, a thought of mischief entered his mind. As he approached her slowly and his subordinates laughed twistedly, he said, "Oh well, while you are here, why don't we show you a good time before you depart from this world, nay?" When Komiko heard him say that, she took a step back in disgust and terror. She was determined not to allow those scumbags to have their way with her. She'd rather die. Since she could feel more Anbu in the area but couldn't find them because they were dispersed, Komiko had to come up with a plan to leave before they made their presence known. She sped toward one of the gaps in their circle, only to have more Anbu emerge from the earth and encircle her once more. What Komiko saw did not sit well with her. She was surrounded by these shinobi, and she could now see that there must have been close to 18 Anbu, with the additional 3 being clearly from Konoha. With a twisted grin, the captain approached Komiko from the side and asked, "Where do you think you are going, Missy? We haven't even started, let alone be finished with you yet. You wouldn't want anything to happen to the alliance, now would you?" Komiko asked, her face displaying fear, even though she couldn't see him smirking. With her bluff, she hoped to dissuade them from doing what they were suggesting. Since she was only a chunin and the K's cage would sacrifice her if it would benefit Suna, she knew it wouldn't have a significant impact on the alliance. Additionally, despite knowing they were auto ninja, she was still following them. However, she had to try. When she said that, his smile just widened beneath the aforementioned Anbu's mask. She shuddered as he laughed and concluded, no one is going to find out about this since you won't live long enough to talk. As if I would let you lay your filthy hands on me, she exclaimed, taking a defensive stance, her terrified expression gone, and her resolve to do whatever it takes to escape this mess. She had decided not to be mocked by this idiot. The captain laughed at her folly in believing she could defeat them and said, if that's how you want to play. Then, without averting his gaze from Komiko, he snapped his finger and said, Oi, new guy, why don't you show us what you got? One of the Anbu in the rear nodded his head before scurrying in her direction to render her immobile as soon as possible. Komiko made a Suna bunshin after noticing that the Anbu was quickly obscuring the distance between them. Then, just before her enemy's kunai could touch her, she quickly switched herself out for the bunshin using a kawarimi. He raced over to her and pushed the kunai into her shoulder, but when it hit her, she turned to sand. With a sudden burst of speed, Komiko easily got behind him and lodged himself as kunai at the base of his skull, his eyes widening in surprise at not seeing her make a bunshin and seeing the shocked expression on the Anbu's face. That's what you get for underestimating me, she said menacingly to the nin's lifeless corpse as he fell to the ground, then spat on him. Hamatsu! Exclaimed one of the Anbu upon seeing the deceased Anbu. He ran to the dead Anbu after clenching his fist. After quickly looking for a pulse and failing to find one, he turned to face Komiko, who, upon hearing the dead Anbu's name yelled, stepped a few feet away from the body. While others stood there and watched everything happen, she was actually shocked to see that Anbu was even worried about his comrade's death. He yelled, you bitch, you killed my brother, and then rushed at her without thinking. So that's why, Komiko thought, then leapt to her feet as she began performing quick hand seals. She yelled, Fuden. Daitopa, wind release, great breakthrough, before putting her hand to her mouth and blasting the ground with a huge gust of wind. Sand and debris flew into the air as an explosion rocked the area upon impact. While some Anbu were trapped in the explosion's aftershock, others managed to flee before the blast struck the ground. She did not give the masked ninja enough time to respond, so she followed up with Fuden. Repusho, wind release, gale wind palm. Komiko unleashed a powerful windstorm and threw a hail of multiple kunais into it, intensifying its urgency. Two screams followed the jutsu performance for a few seconds before they abruptly stopped. They were a little taken aback by what they saw when the dust settled enough to see through it after a minute. The masked Suna Chunin stood in the middle of a distinctly sizable crater, with two dead Anbu impaled with multiple kunais in front of her. When he noticed that two more of his subordinates had died, the captain muttered a growl. He still had to fill out additional paperwork, but it wasn't that he cared. With a flick of his wrist, the captain hurled some kunai with tiny holes in the handle toward Komiko at a remarkable speed after reaching into his weapon pouch. Komiko barely avoided them, but a moment later, she felt a sharp pain in the back of her ears, which caused her eyes to widen. As the pain hit her and she felt the urge to throw up, her hands shot to her head and gripped it tightly, causing her to fall to her knees. What the hell was th? That? She stammered, her face showing pain as blood began to run down her neck and out of her ears and her vision began to become blurry. The captain was pleased because, despite the fact that those kunai had only been made a few days prior to his voyage to Suna, this was the first time he had actually used them. They appeared to function fairly well. He concluded by saying, those kunai are called kunai no kaichu, melody kunai, and are special kunai designed by Orochimaru, Sama's best weaponsmith. They emit constant sound that affects the inner ears, throwing a person off balance or, in your case, makes you want to puke. He then disappeared from view, reappeared beside her, and then gave her a roundhouse to the head, which sent her flying a few feet back. Komiko struggled to control her legs and slowly got to her feet, swaying back and forth. Komiko coughed up blood after the captain approached her and grabbed her by the neck before punching her in the stomach. Then he slammed her to the ground so forcefully that Komiko screamed in pain and her body was outlined. Then he stabbed one into her right shoulder after removing two normal kunai. In order to avoid giving him the pleasure of hearing her scream once more, Komiko had to bite her bottom lip to keep from making a sound. After removing the mask from her face, the Oto Anbu captain's eyes widened a little at her beauty. She would probably be the most attractive woman in the entire village if she lived in Oto. The majority of women in Otobakure were extremely unattractive, which exacerbates their sex crazed behavior due to the accumulation of stress. He laughed lecherously and said, such beauty. All going to waste under this mask. Don't worry though, we'll make good use of you. She will help them decompress on the drive to Otto, but they will need to get rid of her first. He took another kunai and began to slit her clothing and nick her body with it, causing some blood to be drawn. When he began doing that, Komiko's eyes widened, and she pleaded in a tremulous voice, "Please don't do this. Anything but this, please," as tears began to well up in her eyes. Since she was still unable to control her body, she had no choice but to beg for help, even though she didn't want to. After a few seconds, she began to regain some control over her body and resisted the ninja's attempt to undress her, only to be slapped hard. She cried aloud, "Matt! Someone help me, help!" loudly. When she began to scream, he slammed his left hand onto her throat, causing her to gasp for air. With a growl, he released her throat as she struggled with her clothing, saying, "Don't struggle and you might enjoy what we are going to do to you. Scream all you want, because no one is gonna hear you in this desert, bitch." Time in Suna at the moment. Everything was going well for the Yondaime Cage for the first time. The reason for this is that he only finalized the alliance 2 days ago. Although this resulted in more paperwork, it will all be worthwhile by the time the Chunin exam in Konoha is over. The Wind Daimyo will be forced to acknowledge Suna's military might once Konoha is destroyed. As he considered how Suna would be the best of the 5 shinobi nations, a grin came to his face. A tremendous amount of chakra suddenly swept over him, causing his body to go rigid. He hurried to the window and looked out, where he noticed something unexpected. Something purple touched him as he saw what appeared to be a sandstorm far out in the desert. He was taken aback to discover that the purple hue, which he assumed to be chakra, was what was causing the sandstorm to swirl. Even more unexpected was the fact that only Jinchuriki had a chakra that wasn't blue. Unlike most chakras, this one didn't feel malevolent. As he looked down on his village, he saw people frantically running around. When he turned around, he saw a group of Anbu kneeling down in front of him after sensing chakra signatures approaching his office. Cage exclaimed, "Report," with a tone of superiority that was tinged with fear. With a respectful conclusion, the Anbu in front of them said, "There seems to be a massive surge of chakra halfway to the border and Anbu are going there to investigate as we speak. It seems there is enough chakra to dwarf you and Shukaku combined." Cage. Sama. He was unsure if his statement had offended their cage. When Cage heard the final sentence, his eyes widened. They didn't even realize until a few minutes ago that someone this strong was at their border. Before they even had a chance to rise above all other shinobi nations, they needed to get ready for an attack or whatever it was that would destroy them. The Yondaime Cage of Sanagakure asked, "Did you confirm who or what it is?" and received a no and a headshake from the Anbu, which caused him to frown. After receiving cries of, "Hi," from every Anbu in the room, he said, "I see. Take all available Anbu and Junin to search the premise, then report back to me immediately." He then departed in a whirlpool of sand. With Naruto, while still holding the group down and releasing his killing intent, Naruto vanished from his position. He picks Komiko up and then resurfaces where he was just a moment before. He puts her down, removes his coat, and covers her with it. He reduces the amount of killing intent he was releasing while keeping an eye on the group, allowing some Anbu to breathe normally. Naruto walked forward and said in monotone, "You know, if there are 2 things that I absolutely detest, it's rapists and traitors. You fools happen to be in one category. For that you shall pay with your life." "Who the fuck are you?" the group captain asked, stepping back a little to avoid coming across as frightened as he was on the inside. He narrowed his eyes and said, "To you, my name is Pit, and you have fallen into something you can never escape from. Now you die," he said, placing a hand behind Muramubi's back. His voice had taken on a hiss that was almost snake-like, adding to his own terrifying expression. Before faint flashes of orange fire appeared in front of each Anbu at the same time, Naruto disappeared from view. The flashes came to a complete halt before it reappeared as the blonde in front of the captain, facing the startled Anbu captain who witnessed none of Naruto's movements. Naruto wiped the blood off his blade with a flick of his wrist, and then the whole group of masked Anbu fell most anticlimactically, with the exception of the captain, leaving the battlefield covered in a shower of blood and thumps. I built it on the concept that CH gave me. Because Naruto had something very special in store for him, the masked Anbu captain will suffer a punishment worse than death for committing more sins than any of the other members of the group. With fear in his eyes, the Otto Anbu captain stammered out, "W. What are you?" and staggered back for a moment. The captain of the dead Anbu tried to swallow something in his mouth, knowing that he was facing a man who was beyond his capabilities. The word, tried, is crucial because he had to vomit after Naruto nearly crushed his windpipe with a chop to the throat. "Suicide pill, huh? Killing you will be too simple. No, I'll send you to a place where you will wish you never touched her," Naruto said with a sadistic smirk after catching the pill between his fingers and setting it on fire. The captain felt a chill run down his spine before he passed out when Naruto pressed a pressure point in the back of his neck. To instill fear in the hearts of the Oto and Suna ninjas, Naruto chose to leave the bodies in their current state. After rolling up his left sleeve, Naruto showed off an orange bird tattoo. With its tails wrapped around Naruto's arm, it covered his entire forearm with its wings in a pose that suggested it was ready to take off. Before sending chakra into the tattoo, Naruto bit his thumb and smeared blood on it. Then, in a puff of red flame, a phoenix, large enough to accommodate 3 people, appeared with Naruto on top of its beak and the Anbu on top of his shoulder. The phoenix's body was encircled by red feathers that had a hint of yellow in them. 6 feathers stood upward on the phoenix's forehead, and it had a pair of green eyes. A.N. Although I sincerely hope you read chapters 1 through 6, I included the tattoo section for those who did not. With green eyes fixed on Naruto, the phoenix said, "Greetings Naruto. Sama, what can I do for you today?" in a gentle, feminine tone. Before he could finish, he threw the prisoner off his shoulder and tossed him in the direction of his summoner, who caught him in its talon. "Hey Rukujiku, I want you to take this fool." Naruto then pulled a scroll from his pocket and applied some chakra to a unique seal on it, causing writings to begin to appear. To Konoha and also relay a message. Naruto closed the scroll, stopped the chakra flow, and used Rukujiku's beak to tie the strap. After explaining everything, Naruto leapt off of Rukujiku and approached Komiko, cutting her across the palm and splattering blood on it. Head straight for the Hokage Tower and no matter what, do not hand him or the scroll over to anyone but the Hokage. Taking a vial of her blood, he approached one of the dead Anbu and took a paintbrush out of his pouch. Naruto quickly began applying Komiko's blood to his face, creating a crude but effective seal given that he was not a headless Anbu. He proceeded to several one-handed seals and slammed his hand on the seal while whispering, "Shishio Hata Fuin, blood body seal," as the seal began to glow after Naruto poured a significant amount of chakra into it. He then poured the remaining blood into the dead Anbu's mouth. As he stood up, he noticed that Anbu's body had changed, taking on the appearance of his spy Komiko, and the seal had begun to blend into her body. He completed his handiwork and then went to pick up his unconscious spy. When he looked up at the sky, he saw no sign of his summons. Suddenly, he sensed a lot of chakra signatures coming his way, and Naruto vanished into the wind, traveling to his destination. A moment later, a group of Anbu and a few Junins arrived at the gory scene of mangled and headless corpses a few minutes after Naruto left, leaving everyone to wonder, what the hell could have done something like this? Then went ahead to collect the remains of their fallen allies, including, somewhat surprisingly, Suna Chunins. When they were done, they made the decision to search for any clues that might lead to the murderer's identity. They went to report to their cage after failing to find anything. With Naruto an hour later, he had just crossed the border from Suna and was heading toward Wave Country, a small island off the coast of Fire Country. Naruto needed to take Komiko somewhere safe, so he didn't want to go toward Konoha. Otto will probably send spies to Konoha, and Danzo's thugs will also be present. He had to deal with that traitor quickly, or else Konoha would be in danger from within, which is a much bigger threat than any other enemy. He needed to focus on the women in his arm for the time being, but he'll have to deal with that when he returns to Konoha. The following morning, after knocking Komiko out the night before, she was still unconscious when Naruto arrived at the edge of Wave Country. The reason for that is that, after thanking Naruto for saving her last night, she woke up demanding that he let her down. Naruto just gave her a glare and told her to stay put because he didn't want her to hurt herself anymore. Even though she quickly stopped talking, she began to poke Naruto in the chest just to make him angry, which caused Naruto to knock her out. He turned to face Wave across the river and murmured to himself, "Women are such a hassle." Naruto whispered, "Shunpo," and vanished, leaving a trail of fire in his wake before it vanished into the wind as well. Naruto showed up in Wave a moment later to witness something he had not really anticipated. Wave appeared to be a dilapidated town with buildings that could collapse at any time. Shopkeepers were selling mediocre food that was very costly, and people were strolling around in torn clothing. Some people appeared to be buying it even at that point. I see, Naruto thought, the country became impoverished under Gada's control. One of his informants told him that Gada had taken over Wave, but he didn't anticipate it would be this bad. Naruto tried to find his informant by closing his eyes and sending a chakra pulse, but his eyes suddenly opened when he sensed 2 rather large chakra signatures, even though they wouldn't even add up to 1/8 of his power. He smiled as he vanished once more and reappeared in front of a 2-story house with an orange roof. Probably the only house in Wave that didn't appear to be old was this one. Naruto fully concealed his chakra signature out of a desire to surprise everyone inside. Since he was unable to knock with his hands, he walked over to the door and kicked it gently. Naruto kicked it again, a little harder this time, since he was unable to find an answer inside. 1 minute later, he heard a woman who sounded like she might be in her 30s yell, "Coming." Shortly after the door lock clicked, Naruto caught a glimpse of two individuals rushing toward him from opposite directions. Naruto swiftly created two cage bunshin, holding onto the sleeping Komiko as each one removed a kunai from its pouch. Both of them vanished at lightning speed, positioned themselves behind the speeding figures, and put kunais around their necks. A kunai touched one figure's neck, causing her to tense. Whoever it was must be costing Gata a lot of money because she didn't even see them move. If Kurenai couldn't see this guy move, he must be a very strong ninja. Since he is the stronger of the two, she hoped that Kakashi could at least defeat him, or else they would be defeated. Since he was preparing to attack from the opposite side, Kakashi was in a similar position to Kurenai, though he was unaware of it. However, a kunai was already on his throat before he had even reached 40 feet of his adversaries. Kurenai became even more tense when Naruto saw how tense she was and put his mouth near her ears. Then, when she recognized his voice, she blushed and felt a chill go down her spine as he whispered, My, you are a bit jumpy this morning, aren't you my Kurenai-chan?" To ensure that she won't attack, Naruto carefully removes the kunai from her neck. Why is Naruto here? Kurenai wondered. It would be impossible for him to have a month-long mission here without eliminating Gata. When she turned around, she saw Naruto grinning and making the peace sign, which caused her to giggle quietly. At the time, he looked adorable and goofy. With Kakashi, the cage bunshin said in a slack voice, "You should have known better than to rush into a situation such as this blindly, Kakashi-san." This infuriated Kakashi. He had no right to disparage Kakashi's intelligence, even though he knew this person was correct. "Who are you?" Kakashi snarled, causing Naruto to laugh. The clone said, "Why don't you find out for yourself?" Before letting Kakashi go, Kakashi saw his opportunity and quickly turned around, thrusting his kunai to impale the unidentified individual in the stomach. However, he was nearly thrown into the water after flying back from an invisible punch to the face. When Naruto saw Kakashi sent flying by his clone, he rubbed his forehead at his folly. Since he didn't actually speak to Kakashi, it was to be expected that he wouldn't be so dim that he couldn't tell who he was just by listening to his voice. Naruto yelled, "Oi Kakashi no baka." Just as Kakashi was ready to show off his Sharingan, he was called a fool. As he turned to face the voice, a tick popped up over his visible eye. When he noticed Konoha's Fenikusu Sannin standing there, holding a woman to his chest and waving his hand at Kakashi, the tick vanished. Kakashi let out a sigh of relief. This person ought to be able to beat that man. Kakashi concluded languidly, gesturing to Naruto's clone, causing Naruto to perspire. "Ohio Naruto. Sama. I am kind of in a bind at the moment, so can you help me defeat that person?" The sight of another copy of the Sannin when Kakashi turned to face his enemy caused him to blush with embarrassment. Feeling like a fool, he laughed nervously and said, never mind." Kakashi glanced between Naruto and the clone and said, "So, which one of you is the real one?" As Naruto was about to respond, he noticed Kurenai emerge from the house's side, accompanied by his clone. Kurenai noticed Kakashi conversing with Naruto, who had a woman cradled against his chest, as she passed the house. The sight of the young lady nestling into her man's chest made her feel envious. Then it occurred to me that the one behind Kakashi or with her would probably be the real one. She hoped it was the Naruto with her when she heard Kakashi inquire who the real Naruto was. Kurenai balled her fist in response to Naruto's simultaneous dispelling of both clones. "That jerk. He is already cheating on me after just one date," she thought, her face displaying anger. Taking several deep breaths, "All right, give this some thought. Perhaps he's trying to help her because she appears to be unconscious," she thought as she tried to calm herself and assess the situation. She pointed to the woman Naruto was holding and said, "Anyo, Naruto-san. Who is that?" Kurenai had a hint of anger on her face when Naruto looked at her. "Ah, she is my old informant from Suna. A couple squads of Oto Anbu attacked her with unsavory thoughts in mind. I happened to have been leaving Suna at that time and noticed, then killed them all and brought her here," Naruto said in a shaky voice, hoping he wouldn't have to face her wrath because, as the saying goes, hell hath no fury as a woman scorned. Kakashi and Kurenai were shocked to learn that he had killed a couple squads of Anbu in order to avoid infuriate her further. However, they shouldn't come as a surprise. "I would love to stand here and chat all day, but my friend here is in need of rest and a bit of first aid," he said with an authoritative voice. Both of the Junin nodded as they escorted him inside the house. All of the genins inside the house were shocked to see Naruto defeat both of their senseis simultaneously and emerge victorious. Given how quickly Kakashi and Kurenai were defeated, the match wasn't very close. However, since Bunshin was thought to be merely an illusion, they were unable to determine how those clones actually held a kunai. When he witnessed the same technique being used that he had yet to master, Sasuke became enraged. It would always be like a paralyzed person on the ground attempting to crawl while yelling for assistance whenever he called forth a clone. And before he faints from chakra exhaustion, he could only make 2 of those. He was enraged that this inferior shinobi was making the most of the jutsu while he was unable to. Sakura was praising her Sasuke-kun's beauty when she noticed that he was angry, and she knew right away that it was due to that monster. How come he's even here? You are the best Sasuke-kun. I mean, so what if he looks strong? You could beat him if you really wanted to. She concluded in a reassuring tone, genuinely relieving Sasuke of his brooding. I am pretty sure Kakashi-sensei was going easy on him. There is no way he could defeat both our senseis like that. Sure, I can't beat that fake Sannin yet, but once I gain my Sharingan I'll just steal his jutsu and make him bow to his superior before he thought, blushing, making Sakura squeal, thinking her Sasuke-kun was blushing because of her. He chose not to put her down just yet because that actually made him feel better. A stunning woman in her 30s asked, why are they bringing him into the house? With a hint of panic in her voice. Her beauty was enhanced by her waist-length black hair. As all the genins gazed at her, Kiba responded, don't worry Tsunami-san, he is a Konoha ninja and beside even if he were an enemy I would protect you with my life. Kiba said this loudly in an attempt to reassure her that she was safe with him, utterly missing the hurt expression in one Hyuga's lavender eyes. Tsunami was astonished. Despite her inability to determine whether the dirty mutt was genuinely interested in her or would risk his life for her, she nodded and proceeded to the door to let the people in. Thinking he might get some before leaving Wave, Kiba grinned when he saw her nod. Hinata didn't want to go all the way, which infuriated him even after they had been dating for about a month. However, he needed to try Tsunami first because he was confident he could get her soon enough. That woman is really gorgeous. Given how attractive she is, I'm fairly certain that every guy would concur. The tall blonde's dazzling blue eyes meet Tsunami's as she opens the door. Ahem. Kurenai cleared her throat and glared at the woman after being captivated by the deep blue eyes for a few seconds. With a flush on her face, Tsunami looks away and gasps before stammering, Welcome to my home and receiving a response from Uzumaki Naruto, the stunning blonde in front of her. After receiving a nod from Naruto, Tsunami said, you can call me Tsunami, Uzumaki-san. Then I guess it's only appropriate for you to call me Naruto, he concluded with a smile. Kurenai was feeling envious of Naruto and Tsunami's entire exchange. Under his mask, Kakashi was giggling when he noticed Kurenai's face displaying a range of emotions. Kiba was furious inside the house. He had been making advances on her for a day and had received no response from her, so this bitch was blushing and stuttering simply from being in front of that bastard. The other genins simply didn't care about the whole situation. When Tsunami moved away from the door to allow Naruto to enter, she said, well, please come in. Naruto entered the house and took in his surroundings. He noticed that his fangirl Sakuto, or whatever the hell her name is, and the Uchiha were both staring at him. Together with their 3 teammates, both were standing. Anyo Tsunami-san, could you please direct me to a room where I can rest my friend? He said, turning to face Tsunami. Before heading to the kitchen to retrieve medical supplies, Tsunami said, you can take her upstairs and place her on the bed in the second room. I will be there shortly with a first aid kit. After escorting Komiko upstairs, Naruto came downstairs to talk to people, though Kurenai appeared somewhat irate. Naruto saw the lecherous look the mudboy was giving Komiko, and since she was unconscious and couldn't defend herself if he tried something foolish, he subtly turned a cage bushin that hinges into a potted plant before he came down. After all, I'd hate to have to explain to Sensei why I killed a clan heir. Whatever his sisters are stronger and really good looking, he said, referring to his own sad demise. He chastised himself for considering another woman while he was potentially dating Kurenai. No bad Naruto, you have Kurenai. If you were wondering if there would be any Kiba bashing based on this or the previous paragraphs, the answer is no. Completely unaware of the glares he was getting from some genin, or at least choosing to pretend he was, Naruto sat down next to Kurenai and asked, has the old man gone senile, sending bunch of rookie genin outside of Konoha? So what kind of mission is this? Kakashi chose to respond to Naruto's query because Kurenai didn't seem to want to talk. This was supposed to be a C-ranked mission assigned to escort bridge builder Tazuna, but turns out it became an A-ranked mission when we encountered Momochi Zabuza. Momochi Zabuza, as in one of the 7 swordsmen of former hidden village of Mist? Naruto asked, narrowing his eyes, and the copy ninja nodded. Were you able to take him out? Kakashi clarified, hoping the Sannin wouldn't call him a weakling or something for not being able to defeat Zabuza on his own. I was able to defeat him with some help, but before I could deliver the finishing blow, he was saved by one of his accomplices who was dressed as a hunter nin. Naruto said thoughtfully, I see. Sakura interjected, still glaring at Naruto, Kakashi. Sensei, why are you telling him about our mission? When he heard her say that, Naruto chuckled, so why don't you be a good little genin and keep quiet while your superior discusses this matter? He said in a cold voice, adding a hint of murderous intent that made Sakura shudder. I am the superior ranking ninja here, so only the Hokage outranks me, and since he isn't here right now I will be taking over the team for this mission. Sasuke chose to interrupt, asking, who made you my superior? He couldn't allow this man to continue believing he was Sasuke's superior, even though he believed that posing as Naruto's friend would help him. Once Naruto said, first I could kill you with my pinky, second I have the title of Sannin and as such am the superior of every Konoha nin, other than Jiraiya-san who is my equal and Sarutobi. Sensei who is my superior. Now shut up, you bore me. Naruto then unleashed a small portion of killing intent that was surprisingly enough to make the gay Avenger and fangirl gasp before passing out. Kakashi let out a sigh. Sakura will be killed for being a fangirl, and Sasuke will be killed for his conceit. Each of the 3 genin nodded when Kakashi asked, can you 3 take these 2 to their room? After that, they led the superhero and his fangirl to their separate rooms. Now that nuisances are out of the way, why don't we get back to your mission? Naruto asked, glancing at Kakashi, and Kakashi nodded. Kurenai. Kakashi was responding to all of Naruto's questions because she was still mad at him and believed he was flirting with Tsunami. Observing Kurenai's lack of engagement in the discussion, Naruto asked, considering Zabuza got away, do you have any idea when he'll strike back? Her face at the time resembled the Uchiha's when he broods, which is always the case. The only difference between their expressions is that Sasuke looks like the jerk he is, while Kurenai looks lovely. In an attempt to wrap up this conversation quickly so he could return to reading his priceless book, Kakashi nodded. I believe he will heal up within a week or so and in that time Kurenai and I will prepare the team, he concluded, still awaiting the new release, which should be out in roughly a month. Naruto began to consider staying here and possibly assisting them after hearing Kakashi's report. He had originally intended to travel to Wave, possibly locate a suitable residence for Komiko, and then proceed directly to Konoha because Suna would probably call her Kia. In order to avoid raising suspicions, Naruto took her to the one location where shinobis hardly ever appear unless they are on a mission, in which case Konoha shinobi will probably be hired. It was impossible for Naruto to abandon them to fight off Zabuza now that Kurenai and the group had arrived. Even though they were able to repel him the last time, he will undoubtedly bring reinforcements this time. After letting out a sigh and running his fingers through his fiery blonde hair, Naruto turned to face Kakashi, who was now reading Icha Icha Paradise Volume 10. This reminded Naruto that Jiraiya had instructed him to give Kakashi one of the Icha Icha books. Before realizing that Kakashi would probably spend most of his time reading the perverted book instead of helping his students train or something, he began to take one out of his pocket. He therefore made the decision to give it to him after the mission was completed. He turned to face Kurenai, who was gazing into space with a dejected expression on her face. With a worried expression on his face, Naruto inquired, is there a problem Kurenai-san? In an attempt to find out what was wrong with her. Kurenai noticed Naruto's worried expression and reassured him by saying, don't worry about me. I am just tired is all. She then got up and walked out of the room. Naruto said, Kakashi, do you know what's wrong with her? Considering the way she was looking at you while you and Tsunami-san were talking, I would say she's jealous, Kakashi replied, setting his book down on the table in front of him. Naruto gave him a perplexed look, which caused him to sigh. Is it possible that the Sannin is this naive about women? Naruto asked, why would she be jealous about that? He had no real understanding of women. They can be joyful one moment and depressed the next. When Kurenai first saw him, she appeared somewhat joyful, but a few minutes later, she started to feel very down. When Naruto heard Kakashi say that Kurenai might like him, he blushed. Probably because she likes you and it seemed like you were flirting with Tsunami-san in the doorway. Although he was a little proud of himself for being able to offer dating advice to one of the world's most formidable ninja, Kakashi was somewhat annoyed with Naruto for being so dim-witted. Before leaving his seat and making his way to the door, Naruto remarked, "If that's true, I guess I'll have to speak to her about that." As she left Kakashi to his book, she said, "Now if you'll excuse me, I have to take care of something." 15 minutes after the fact, Naruto reached his destination, a dilapidated shack on the outskirts of town. Naruto entered and surveyed the area, which appeared to have been deserted for a few months at the very least. Naruto walked outside and saw an elderly woman after failing to locate the person he was seeking. Naruto addressed the elderly woman with courtesy, asking, "Excuse me, ma'am. Do you know where Shin Kyogoku lives?" In an attempt to confirm that the attractive young man was not one of Gada's men, the elderly woman turned to face the voice and inquired, "Is he a friend of yours?" However, he didn't appear to be one of them because all of his men had a perverse expression permanently affixed to their faces and looked like crazy. This person appeared to be courteous. Naruto nodded, and she went on, "I am sorry for your loss," to the Sannin's perplexed expression. Asking, "What do you mean?" Naruto said. She concluded with a melancholy smile, recalling the courteous men who used to assist her with groceries and occasionally with her financial needs. "I guess you haven't heard. Your friend was killed by Gada's men a couple months ago. For suspicion of treason, he was publicly executed to bring fear into the people of Wave since Gada has deluded himself into thinking he was some sort of king. Additionally, he had been hoarding large sums of money to aid in the bridge's construction, but Gada discovered this one day and executed him for treason." After giving her a nod and saying, "Arigato," Naruto turned to leave, lost in his own thoughts. It makes sense why he hadn't heard from Shin in a long time. Every month or so, he would receive reports from all of his spies. Naruto's incapacity caused him to ball his fist. Rather than assuming that Shin was simply preoccupied, he ought to have investigated the issue. However, he was essentially powerless to change that other than to hold Gada accountable for his actions. Naruto needed to relax, so he spent a few hours wandering the island before receiving some news as his clone from Komiko's room vanished. He made the decision to go back since it appeared she had woken up. Naruto walked for 20 minutes before reaching Tazuna's house. As he opened the door, he saw two unfamiliar faces at the table in addition to everyone else. A 60-year-old man with light black hair and glasses was among the unidentified individuals. The other was a young child, perhaps 7 years old. Komiko, who was currently sneaking toward Tsunami, was also present. Naruto called out to everyone, grabbing their attention, "Ohio Mina." Before he felt a hand on his shoulder, the elderly man jumped up when he saw Naruto and yelled, "Who are you?" in a terrified tone. He noticed Kakashi's hand on his shoulder when he turned to look back. He looked at Kakashi bewilderedly. Tazuna relaxed a little when Kakashi said, "Don't worry, he is with us." Tsunami smiled slightly and said, "You have been out for a long time, Naruto-san." Before blushing at what he saw, Naruto turned to face Tsunami. As everyone wondered what was making Naruto blush, they noticed Komiko sitting next to Tsunami now behind her, caressing her breast and muttering something about being so soft and big, which caused Kiba and Kakashi to run back from nosebleeds. This seemed foolish to Sasuke. Why would someone blush after witnessing such a gruesome scene? However, the idea that he was the one feeling up about Hyuga from the graduating class before his made him blush. Before turning away and adopting his indifferent demeanor, even though Shino was blushing. Given that his daughter was being abused, Tazuna gasped for air and then swiftly turned his head away from the offensive scene. His grandson simply didn't understand what was going on, so he was unaware of the entire situation. Particularly the unconscious Hyuga girl, who fainted a moment after her lavender eyes locked on the perverse yet, the female population turned a bright red. The sight before her was a little erotic. Tsunami's face was flushed with shame and rage. Embarrassed by a woman's groping and enraged that everyone, including her son, was observing her. When Tsunami said, "Stop this right now, Komiko-san or no dinner for you tonight," Komiko stopped what he was doing. Naruto laughed and said, "I see you are getting along with everyone, Komiko." Komiko nodded and gave him a sheepish smile. Both women blushed as he said, "Though I didn't expect you to be so well acquainted with Tsunami-san." His tone was slightly sarcastic. "So how are you feeling?" Naruto inquired worriedly. "Good as new," Komiko exclaimed with enthusiasm as she flexed her muscles and then winced due to shoulder pain. "Can I have a minute with you, Kurenai-san?" Naruto asked, nodding despite his observation, and then he left the house, followed by Kurenai. She was unable to understand what Naruto was trying to discuss with her. Since Kakashi had already described their predicament, it couldn't be related to the mission. What might it be, then? Following his departure from the house, Naruto leapt onto Tazuna's rooftop, sat down, and gestured for Kurenai to join him. After a minute of silence between them, Naruto interrupted and caught her off guard by asking, "Mind telling me what's wrong?" "What do you mean?" Kurenai asked, her face displaying delirium. Naruto let out a sigh. "Don't play coy with me, Kurenai-san. There's something bothering you, so spill," he said in a serious tone as his blue eyes locked with Kurenai's red eyes, unnerving Kurenai. He wasn't sure if she was acting confused or if she was truly as confused as she seemed. Kurenai asked, unwilling to discuss it, "Why are you asking me this?" But judging by the expression Naruto was giving her, she didn't think she would have an option. "Because, when I arrived at Tazuna-san's house, you seemed actually happy to see me, but after introducing myself to Tsunami-san, you started becoming depressed and Kakashi came to a conclusion. He said you might have thought that I was flirting with Tsunami-san and became jealous," Naruto replied. Kurenai thought, "That pervert," and balled her fist. "She'll make sure he pays for telling Naruto that, weren't you?" she exclaimed without hesitation. Naruto's sad tone made Kurenai feel bad for accusing him of flirting with another woman. "Do you think that little of me, Kurenai-san? I would never even think of flirting with another woman considering I went out with you even if it wasn't a great one. Nevertheless, it was still a date." Trying his best to explain, he concluded, "I apologize if it seemed like I was flirting with Tsunami-san, but given my background, I wouldn't really know the difference between flirting and simply having a conversation with a woman." Kurenai understood him to a certain extent. She was aware that he had not spent much time with women. Even so, it appeared that he was having a great time conversing with Tsunami, and she couldn't help but feel envious because she liked him a lot, not that she would soon acknowledge it. She looked down and said shakily, "So you really weren't flirting with her?" Not wanting to look him in the eye. After shaking his head, Naruto grinned and said, "No, even though she seemed like a nice lady, she is just not my type," scrunching his nose as he watched her for a response. Naruto looked up at the sky and then assumed a thinking pose as Kurenai's head shot up and her eyes met his before she asked, "What is your type then?" With curiosity. She thought he was even more adorable than before and continued to get cuter every day. Kurenai turned red at the last item on Naruto's list when he looked back down at her a few seconds later and said, "Someone who is beautiful, caring, aggressive, also submissive, someone who understands me and loves me for who I am and what not I represent, a brunette and a woman with beautiful red eyes." Naruto finished with a sly smirk. With a serious expression, Naruto acknowledged, "Look, Kurenai-san, I like you, and if we are to continue dating then I wouldn't dream of looking at another woman as long as you are by my side." After saying, "And this is to prove it," Naruto drew her into an intense kiss. Before slowly closing her eyes and beginning to kiss him back, Kurenai's eyes widened in total shock and at his temerity. Kurenai put her hand on his neck and felt his powerful arms slide around her waist, intensifying the kiss as they both threw all of their passion into one of their many future kisses. She reluctantly allowed him in after his tongue licked her lips in an attempt to get her consent. Without releasing his kiss, Naruto carefully lifted her up and laid her on his lap. As their tongues fought and probed each other's mouths, tasting and enjoying it, their bodies blended together. Naruto and Kurenai left their heated makeout session after a minute, with both of them blushing and breathing heavily. As Kurenai considered what to say to him at this point, Naruto scratched the back of his head. Kurenai nodded shyly in response to Naruto's question, "So does that prove something?" After that, Kurenai sighed with relief that she wasn't the first to speak. Before realizing that she was sitting on Naruto's lap, Kurenai was having a great time in his warmth. This caused her to jump out of his lap and blush more than ever before. "Ah, I was enjoying that," Naruto whined, causing him to be punched in the head. She said, "Pervert." Naruto muttered something under his breath. Which of Kurenai's giggles did Naruto think was very adorable? Before Kakashi invited them to dinner, Naruto and Kurenai engaged in small talk for the next 2 hours. She gladly accepted Naruto's hand when he stood up and extended it to her. "I don't kiss a guy after one date, so you better take me on another one, Buster," she said, glaring slightly in jest as she got to her feet. Before they both leapt from the rooftop and entered the house, Naruto grinned and sheepishly scratched the back of his head. "Sure." Naruto entered the dining room and noticed that everyone was seated at the table, anticipating dinner. After he and Kurenai approached and took a seat, Tsunami entered the room a short while later carrying a platter of food. Everyone nodded in agreement as Kakashi said, "Arigato for the food, Tsunami-san." She took a seat next to Tazuna and said, "It's no problem, after all you guys are protecting my father's life and trying to help make Wave Country a better place for everyone." Everyone said, "Itadakimasu." Then there was an awkward silence during which they all ate their food until a small boy entered the room and sat down, scoffing. Tsunami introduced her son, saying, I don't think I've introduced my son to you yet, Naruto-san. This is Inari. Just loud enough for everyone to hear, the boy muttered, doesn't matter, they're just going to die like everyone else who goes up against Gato. Kurenai, unaware that this server would enrage the young child, reassured him, don't worry Inari. I assure you none of us are going to die at the hands of some business tyrant. We're all more than skilled enough to handle a mission like this, especially since Naruto-san is here right now. Unable to finish his sentence, he yelled, why do you even try? You are all going to die just like Kia. Before bolting from the room and up the stairs, his eyes streaming with tears. The only thing the Leaf Ninjas could do was sit there in shock, unable to understand why he did that. The pain in the little child's eyes was only visible to Naruto. Tazuna said, I must apologize for Inari's behavior, he's still mourning the loss of someone very dear to us, in a serious tone. With compassion, Naruto said, I am sorry for your loss. It's okay. Everyone needs to let go of their precious people sometime in life, Tsunami replied with a shake of her head, but it seems Inari is still not over my husband's death. Sakura interrupted, not realizing that it was a delicate topic. What happened? Deciding that it was more of Tsunami's tale, Tazuna consented to allow her to respond and tease. A little over a year ago Inari became very close to a man named Kaiza who had saved Inari's life. Kaiza was a very kind man who tried to protect our country and was considered a hero by most. Inari considered him as an adoptive father who no one could defeat. When Gato showed up and started trying to take over Wave, Kaiza fought back against his men. This seemed to inspire the rest of the people of Wave to do the same. However, Gato saw this and decided to have Kaiza killed in front of everyone to crush people's spirit. That day Inari saw his father literally tortured to death. After Kaiza's death everyone in Wave seemed to give in to Gato's control. Now Inari thinks just like the rest of Wave that if anyone stands against Gato they will fail and end up dead. As she recalled the events she shared with Kaiza. With a few tears in her eyes, Hinata remarked, that's so sad. Everyone's spirits appeared to have fallen after listening to Tsunami's gloomy tale. In an attempt to lighten the atmosphere in the room, Tazuna pointed to Naruto and said, so what's this about you guys winning easily since this Gaki is here? As Kakashi choked on his food, all of the genins gave him glares, saying, he looks just as weak as the other 5 brats. After a few seconds, he began to turn blue, and Kakashi began to laugh by punching his chest until he put down the food. He was gasping for air when he said, damn, I think I just saw the Shinigami. Kakashi expressed his opinion, causing Tazuna to spit out the water in his mouth. To answer your question, Tazuna-san, Naruto. Sama is one of the strongest ninja in the world and he is probably stronger than all of us in this room combined. Nani, he is half your age, Tazuna exclaimed in shock. There are people younger than me, but stronger than me. In the ninja world age doesn't mean anything. Naruto. Sama just happened to be one of them, Kakashi clarified. Naruto said, not at all flattered, you are flattering me, Kakashi. The remainder of the meal was spent in much better spirits, and before long, it was time for everyone to go to bed. Since they had to get up early tomorrow to take up their guard duty and prepare for the impending battle, everyone said good night and left the table to head to their separate bedrooms. Unknown place. Only a lamp illuminated the corridor where 2 figures sat a few feet apart, talking to each other, but not enough to show their faces that were obscured by the darkness. Another person burst through the door, abruptly interrupting them. Both figures turned to face the newcomer, who was gasping for air after probably running. Orochimaru, Sama, he exclaimed. One of the seated figures in a snake. Like hiss demanded, what do you want, vermin? Can't you see I am in the middle of an important meeting? As he was trembling from the growing murderous intent in the room, the newcomer said, Gomen. Nesai Orochimaru. Sama. But we have just received urgent news from Suna via their fastest bird regarding the squad of Otto Anbu that was sent to Suna a few days ago. It seems that the whole squad were slaughtered along with couple of root members by something still unknown. Send a message to Suna and tell them to inform me about any recent news on this matter. Now get out of my sight, Chunin. Orochimaru offered praise. He needed to send a message to Suna, but by now he would have killed the Chunin for interrupting his meeting. Before leaving the room, the frightened Chunin said, hi. Looking to his side, Orochimaru noticed that the person who had been sitting next to him had now stood up. I must get going, Orochimaru. Sama. This incident must be reported to Danzo. Sama. The figure gave him a smile before leaving the room, leaving only Orochimaru. As he licked his lips with his snake-like tongue in anticipation of seeing his former sensei's blood, Orochimaru looked at the door and then laughed sadistically, saying, Kukakuku, your time will come soon, Danzo. Right after my senile old fool of a sensei. Konoha, a figure, tethered to a chair inside a prison cell, was dressed in ragged clothing that might have once belonged to Anbu. A man in a black leather trench coat, with his Konoha Hite.8 unfolded and used as a bandana over his head, suddenly loomed over him. He grinned sadistically as the door opened. The man said the one thing that guaranteed the fate of the tide. Up figures as he turned to face the two newcomers. Boys, this fellow's flames of youth have diminished and he needs your help. The restrained figure pointed to the two newcomers' smiling faces before becoming enraged and deciding to kill them right away. In Konoha, in the Hokage office, Sarutobi was signing his ever-increasingly evil paperwork with an irritated look obvious on his features. Stupid Naruto and his stupid ideas, he mumbled as he thought back to the day before. Flashback, finally finishing up his paperwork for the day, Sarutobi was relaxing on his comfortable chair while sucking on his pipe. Suddenly, a man wearing a black leather trench coat along with his Konoha Hite.8 unfolded using it as a bandana over his head shunshined into his office. Sarutobi looked plainly at him then asked, "What is it, Ibiki?" with a curious look. "Hokage. Sama, there seems to be a problem with the Auto Anbu," Ibiki stated. Sarutobi gave him a questioning look before motioning for him to continue. Under Naruto Sama's new torture tactic, we were able to obtain certain amount of information from the prisoner, but before we were able to finish up the interrogation, he started mumbling some nonsense before dying from a prolonged seizure. After using a reluctant Yamanaka to determine the cause, we found out that he had a mental breakdown due to not being able to handle all the mental images from our newest torture, Ibiki elaborated with glee. He couldn't wait to use it on more incompetent subjects in the future. Naruto. Sama truly is a genius, Ibiki thought with a dreamy look. The old man saw the look on Ibiki's face and he immediately knew that it was the same look a certain purple-haired special Junin gets when she finds new type of poison to try on her prisoners, and in Ibiki's case it was most likely the one to try out Naruto's special Guy and Lee torture tactic. Even though it seemed to be really effective, he just didn't have the heart to let anyone else to go through this suffering, no matter what their crime was, so he would just have to ban it. "What did you find out?" Sarutobi asked, getting Ibiki out of his imaginative state. Ibiki nodded before he said, "His name is Shibito Kazukato, Anbu captain from the newly created Otogakure located in Rice Country. His team was ordered by his cage to go into Suna and relay some message, though before we were able to find out what he had passed." Ibiki expounded. "Did you find out who identity of the Otokage?" the Hokage asked, earning a nod from Ibiki, who said one word, "Orochimaru." Sarutobi's eyes grew wide in response. The old man thought for a second before he said, "Dismissed, but before you go, I am forbidding you from using Naruto's special idea again," crushing Ibiki's future hope of having the ultimate torture tactic. A smile of satisfaction reached the Sandame's lips when he saw the desperate look on Ibiki's face. It's true what they say. Misery does love company, he thought with a chuckle. He then saw Ibiki using his puppy eye jutsu in such a pathetic attempt to sway him, that Sarutobi had no choice but to allow him to use it, but only on extreme cases. Ibiki gave him a nod of satisfactory before he shunshined out of the Hokage office. End flashback. Now here he was, doing more paperwork due to the Anbu's death. At this point he could only wish that someone would help him get out of this miserable life, and soon. Wave Country. A week has gone by since Kurenai and Kakashi, along with their Genin team, arrived at Wave on the mission to protect Tazuna. During this time, both Junins took turns between teaching teams 7 and 8 and guarding Tazuna while he was working on finishing the bridge. Everyone progressed pretty quickly with their training. Hinata, having already learned the tree walking, went on to water walking, which took her 2 days to completely master. Sakura, even though completed her task on her first try, still had to continue working on it to improve her pathetic stamina. Shino got it within an hour or two. The only ones who had trouble mastering tree walking were Sasuke and Kiba, since both had the most amount of chakra to control and least amount of patience. Kiba, for his part, had most certainly learned to control his emotion due to Naruto teaching him a lesson after he tried something unacceptable with Hinata, much to her displeasure. Flashback. Kuso. "Why can't I do this?" Kiba yelled out in frustration. He had been practicing for a whole day and still was a few feet away from getting to the top of the tree along with Sasuke, who was few inches above him. Sasuke was even more annoyed than Kiba at the moment. Reason being, he had to listen to Kiba's complaining for the last 10 minutes, which was getting on his nerves. Also, the fact he was still trying to finish this useless tree walking, even though his sensei told them that this would help their chakra control. He just couldn't see how the hell this was going to help him take down his traitorous brother. He also was infuriated that everyone else beside Kiba, of course, finished tree walking before him. He was brought out of his musing when he heard Kiba yell out, "Oi Sasuke! Let's go back. I haven't had anything to eat from the morning. Sasuke wouldn't naturally listen to what Kiba says, but right now he was hungry, so with a simple nod, he complied to head back to Tazuna's house for lunch with Kiba. Kiba and Sasuke jumped down on the ground and Kiba looked at his familiar Akamaru, who was sleeping under the shade of a big tree. Let's go, Akamaru. I am pretty sure you are hungry, too. The dog woke up and barked in agreement before all three headed for lunch. On their way, Kiba spotted Hinata in the middle of a lake practicing water walking, which made him slightly jealous. Here was his girlfriend doing something that he couldn't do yet. Forgetting his hunger, Kiba looked at Sasuke, who also sported a frown on his face while looking at Hinata. Hey Sasuke, why don't you go ahead? I will join you soon, Kiba said. Sasuke made a grimace showing Kiba his annoyance. Whatever, Sasuke mumbled with his uncaring attitude as he slowly walked to Tazuna's home. After Sasuke left the area, Kiba and Akamaru made their way toward Hinata. Hey Hinata, he called out in a sonorous tone. Hinata looked back and saw Kiba standing on the shore of the lake. Hello Kiba-kun, she said in a delicate voice with a smile before she gingerly walked toward Kiba as not to fall in the water. She was still somewhat an amateur in this whole walking on water thing. What are you doing here? She asked, after she safely stepped onto the solid ground. She stopped her stuttering around Kiba since she was more comfortable around him beside her sensei, Kurenai. I was originally going back for lunch, but then saw you training and you looked like you could use a break. So I thought maybe we could do something to take your mind off of training for now, Kiba pronounced. Hinata smiled at him for being so considerate. Nodding her head, Hinata then sauntered up to a tree and sat under the shade before motioning for Kiba to come and sit beside her, which Kiba did with satisfaction. After her boyfriend made himself comfortable, Hinata asked, So what do you want to do, Kiba-kun? While enjoying the little bit of rest she was getting. Why don't you sit back while I give you massage to help you relax? Kiba said with a slightly perverse smile which Hinata couldn't see because she was busy averting her gaze with a blush playing on her cheeks. Deciding to accept the offer due to her stiff shoulder, Hinata gave him a shy nod, not knowing what his intentions were. She turned around to give him access to her shoulder before Kiba started his work. After a minute of enjoying the massage, Hinata started relaxing. Seeing her completely mollified, Kiba decided to go in for the kill before he brought his lips to her neck, lightly kissing. This act provoked a gasp from Hinata. Kiba-kun. Her breath hitched when his hands started roaming over her covered stomach, and started going higher. She could feel his breath on the back of her neck. WH. What are you doing? She finally stuttered out with an intense blush from embarrassment. I want you, he whispered with a husky voice. The young Hyuga's eyes widened in shock when his lips grazed her earlobe. She felt his hands moving only a few inches away from grasping her pugnacious breasts. Immediately going into action, Hinata grasped his hands, stopping him in track before she said, Stop Kiba-kun. I am not ready yet and we are too young, with courage. A low growl was heard in response, sending a shiver down her spine in slight fear. But I am ready and that's all that should matter, my love, Kiba stated. Tears threatened to fall from her pearly eyes before she quickly shut them as not to let her tears fall when she heard him say that. So he was just using me all this time, she thought. While she was lost in thoughts, her firm grasp on Kiba's hands loosened, which he took as an indication of her acquiescence. With a smirk filled with confidence, Kiba squeezed her and almost drooled at the softness and hugeness of her breasts. Hinata's eyes flew open before she shot up from the ground, her hand shooting forward to Kiba's face. A loud sound echoed throughout the clearing as Hinata's palm made contact with the Inuzuka's cheek, leaving its mark. Hinata let loose a stream of tears that trailed down her soft features. Kiba stared wide-eyed at the girl from shock. He never expected her to react this way. Just as he was about to say something, Hinata ran away from him as though he were contaminated by an invisible contagion. She raced back home with tears flowing freely down her cheeks, hoping to find comfort in the woman she had come to admire and trust over the last month. Kiba stood where Hinata had left him, a dazed look obvious on his face, holding his red check. With Kurenai was just doing her hair, waiting for Naruto to come so they could go outside and hang out for a while. She and Naruto had a lot of fun the past couple of days with occasional kissing and other stuff, though nothing serious. She didn't want their relationship to move too fast. Just as she finished her hair, someone barged into her room. She thought it was Naruto, so she didn't bother to check who it was. Then she heard a soft cry which sounded oddly like Hinata's. Looking back, she saw the Hyuga heiress face down on her bed, sobbing away. Quickly getting up, she went over to the crying girl and put a hand on her shoulder. Hinata, what's wrong? She asked in a mollifying tone. A concerned look obvious on her face. The girl cried louder, as if ignoring the calming presence of her sensei. Kurenai then slightly moved her student so she could cradle the girl until she could calm down enough to talk. A few minutes later, Hinata finally calmed down. "Hinata, tell me what's wrong," Kurenai asked again with a soothing tone. Hinata looked up at her sensei, her eyes red from all the crying. "Kurenai. Sensei. Hiccup. Kiba. Kuna." She proceeded to inform Kurenai of the event that took place between her and Kiba. To say Kurenai was pissed was an understatement. She knew Kiba was a hormone-raged teenager, but she never expected him to pull something like this with the heiress of the Hyuga clan. She was going to have to do something about this. Unbeknownst to them, Naruto was standing outside of Kurenai's room with a beyond aggravated expression. He was just about to come into her room so they could head outside, but when he arrived, he heard someone crying and decided to listen in. It technically wasn't the right thing to do, but that's not the issue here. After hearing what happened, it took every bit of his willpower not to just go over to the filthy mutt and rip out his throat. Even though he couldn't do that, that mutt still needs to learn his lesson, and with that in mind Naruto went down the stairs to find the Inuzuka. Downstairs, Kiba came into the living room where Sasuke, Sakura, and their one-eyed sensei were watching TV. Shino was most likely guarding the bridge at the moment. They looked at him with narrowed eyes and Sasuke asked, "What happened to you, dog breath?" with an amused look clear on his face. "Shut up, Sasuke," Kiba growled, annoyed by the fact that people saw him in his current state. "Don't call Sasuke-kun that," was the retort from the pink-haired Kunoichi. It was ignored by everyone in the room. At the moment, they were more interested in knowing what had happened to Kiba. Kiba was about to shut her up, but stopped when he saw Naruto coming down the stairs with a scary look on his face. "Kiba-san, can I see you for a moment?" Naruto asked in a firm tone, unnerving everyone in the room, especially Kiba considering he was one being called. With a reluctant nod, Kiba decided to follow Naruto, though he wasn't sure as to why the Sannin would want to talk to him in private. He hoped it wasn't because of what happened earlier with him and Hinata, though there was pretty slim chance of Naruto knowing that, unless, of course, Hinata talked to him about it. Nah, Kiba thought. "So where are we going?" Kiba asked, expecting Naruto to answer, but after a few minutes of silence, he asked again, "Are you going to tell me where we are headed to, Naruto?" "Sama?" While his eyes were filled with mock adulation and respect. Still not getting an answer, Kiba growled under his breath and was about to repeat his question with curses only to feel a slight pull on his jacket followed by seeing nothing but a blur for a second before he was slammed into a tree, knocking the breath out of him. "Listen, you little prick. I don't know who you think you are, but I will not tolerate that kind of behavior from a ninja of Konoha, especially not from someone who only recently became a genin," Naruto said in a dangerous tone, letting out some killing intent, which made Kiba tremble in fear. The boy was still trying to catch his breath. "What, cough? The hell are you, cough, talking about?" he asked while struggling with his words as Naruto's right hand put pressure on his chest. "I am talking about what happened between you and Hyuga Hinata," Naruto stated. Kiba looked at him in shock. "Do you know what you've just done? Did you even stop to think? No, I bet that you didn't. You just copped a feel from Hyuga Hinata, the heiress of the Hyuga clan. I don't care if she was your girlfriend or not. You didn't ask her permission to do what you did." Naruto stopped his verbal assault, as Kiba's eyes grew wide in realization. "I'm glad to see you understand. Obviously you didn't take into account what kind of pull the Hyugas have. Why, for groping the heiress, I'd say. They kill you on sight, should Hinata-san, Kurenai-san or I choose to tell the main branch. Now, I've seen greater men die for less. And it would be a shame for the heir to the Inuzuka clan to be killed for such an act. I'm sure it would bring great shame to your family." By this time, Kiba was near tears. He thought Hinata would be okay with it, which is why he didn't bother to listen when she told him to stop. Boy, was he wrong. Naruto continued, hiding his emotions all the while. "Remember this, for it will be your only warning. I will not stand for this type of thing ever again. It is a disgrace to you, your clan, and your village. Should I ever hear of you committing such heinous acts again, I personally will be the one to deal with you. Am I understood?" Naruto barked out, forcing more fear into Kiba. Why? Yes. Naruto. Sama. He stuttered out with a nod, holding himself back from passing out from the overwhelming transient killing intent bestowed upon him. "Now, get back to the house and apologize to Hinata Sama while I take care of Kurenai-san," Naruto said with an exasperated sigh before he left Kiba. Kiba, who had no idea where he was, looked around and saw he was surrounded by trees. "How the hell did we get all the way here?" he said to no one in particular while feeling his chest strangely. It seemed as if the pressure from Naruto's hand had left an indelible imprint. Quickly standing up, he fixed himself before heading home again. 30 or so minutes later, Kiba walked straight into the house, ignoring the look he was getting from the occupants in the living room. Walking up the stairs, he headed toward Kurenai's room where he predicted Hinata to be. With shaky hands, he slowly opened the door and saw Kurenai sitting with Hinata, comforting her. "What the hell are you doing here, Kiba?" Kurenai said, making Kiba flinch. Putting his head down in shame, he answered, "I am sorry, sensei, but I need to talk to Hinata right now." Kurenai's glare only strengthened before she said, "Why? So you can finish what you started?" Making him feel lower than the dirt. "No, I just need a minute to apologize to Hinata for my behavior earlier," he said in a serious tone. Kurenai stared at him for a while longer before she nodded and got up to leave the room. "If he tries anything, let me know. I will be right outside this room," Kurenai said to Hinata as she left the room. Kurenai closed the door, leaning her head back against the wood. She sighed to herself and listened in on the conversation inside, her eyes closed. Inside the room, Kiba went over to the bed and sat down few feet away from Hinata, who held her head at an oblique angle, so that she could, by merely shifting her eyes, look at Kiba and then out the windows. Kiba shifted under her gaze, trying to find the courage to say something. Taking a deep breath to calm his nerve, he said, "I am sorry for what I did, Hinata," trying to sound as sincere as possible. Hinata stared at him then said, "Id.don, tkn. Know if I can for. Give yo.u, kkiba.kun," with her stuttering back. "Look Hinata, I am really sorry. What I did was underhanded and I didn't consider you feelings. I promise I will do anything to make it up to you, so please just give me another chance," Kiba pleaded with a desperate look on his face. Hinata looked out the window, not wanting to see the expression on his face. She shook her head, "You bridge broke my HEA. Heart Kiba. Ku. N. Y. Which is why I don't think we should be a company C. Couple anymore," she replied softly, trying to hold back the oncoming tears. "I see." Kiba whispered with remorse. How could he have been so stupid to hurt someone like Hinata? Now he felt worse than he did when he first came into the room. "Can we at least maybe still be friends?" he asked with hope. Hinata looked him in the eye, trying to see if he was genuine. When she saw no deception in his eyes, she nodded her head, earning a sad smile from Kiba. "Arigato, Hinata," Kiba said. "Maybe she will let me into her heart sometime in the future. I will do anything within my power not to break it twice." With that in mind, he left the room with newfound determination. Right outside the room, Kurenai lifted her eyelids slowly when she felt Naruto's presence. Her crimson orbs set upon seas of blue as the young Sannin walked over to her. "I take it you had some part in making him apologize?" Kurenai asked. "I merely told him the facts and made sure he understood that his actions could have serious consequences," the blonde replied with a smirk. "Hama, I am disgusted by his actions, but it seems that your talk shall suffice in punishment." Naruto nodded before he looked around the hallway. Sensing no one near, he wrapped his arms around the Junin's neck, bringing her lips close to his, catching her in a passionate kiss, eliciting a moan from Kurenai. He let his tongue lick at her lower lip, asking for entrance. She complied and let their tongues dance. Kurenai brought her hands up and caressed the Phoenix Sannin's face. They deepened the kiss, relishing each other's taste. The soft sound of footsteps reached their ears and Naruto let his grasp relax. Kurenai stepped back and rested her back against the wall just as her charge opened the door. Kiba kept his head low and walked past them, only looking up to receive a glare from Naruto. He quickened his pace and disappeared down the stairs. "You know, if we keep doing that around the house, someone might notice. I am pretty sure Kakashi already knows about us," Kurenai said, trying to catch her breath. Naruto chuckled, "Ha ha ha, Kakashi should know, considering I went to him for dating advice. Besides, if anyone else finds out, I will just have to eliminate them," he finished in a joking tone. "Anyway, can I still take your offer on that walk?" Naruto asked, already knowing the answer. "I'm sorry. I still need to look after Hinata for a while," Kurenai said as she peeked into the room to see the girl staring out the window with a dazed look on her face. "I understand. If you guys need anything, let me know. I will be downstairs," he offered before pecking her on the lips, then sauntering down the stairs. End flashback. After that, everything pretty much returned to normal, though Hinata was still a little cautious around Kiba, which was understandable. Next morning, Naruto's ears perked up gently in his sleep. He had mastered detecting the quietest sounds in the past. This sound that interrupted his nap, though, was that of softened footsteps from far off. He jumped up, fully awake in that one moment. He knew that Kurenai and Kakashi would be protecting Tazuna early in the morning, and from what he could tell from looking outside, it was probably just past 10 a.m. There should have been no reason for anyone from the Genin team to be back at the house this early, and if they were, they would find no need in being stealthy, though it was too pathetic to be called stealth. Something was amiss. Naruto's instincts screamed that. Naruto pulsed his chakra, sensing his surrounding to find some unwanted guests. He created a cage bunshin, then ordered, "Go wake Komiko up," as he proceeded to check the surroundings from the window. The doppelganger nodded his head before heading toward Komiko's room. The blonde Sannin pulled out a kunai, preparing himself for an attack. He crept downstairs, making sure to silence his feet with chakra. There were sounds outside, possibly voices. Naruto listened intently, trying to pick up the conversation. "Stop! Get away from my mom!" yelled out a boy, and by the sound of it, it was Inari. Hoping to see what was happening, Naruto sped outside, still concealing his presence from the enemy. He was slightly surprised to see Inari running towards two men with swords. One had an eye patch on his left eye. His left hand seemed to be covered with some kind of tattoo. The other one had tattoos under his eyes with a winter hat on his head. "Inari, no, don't come near," his mother yelled with a desperate look on her face. The boy didn't heed his mom's words as he kept on running toward the wannabe samurais. "The boss just said we need one hostage, right?" questioned the one with eye patch. "Yeah, that's all," his companion answered. "Then I guess we could kill this one." "I swear if you hurt him, I'll..." Tsunami tried to interrupt, but never got to finish as she was knocked out by one of the assailants. "Take a nap, woman," said the guy with tattoos under his eyes before he and his companion grasped the hilt of their swords, bringing them out of their sheaths. Both took a swipe at Inari, who was just a foot away from them. Just as the sword came near him, Inari closed his eyes waiting for the swords to split him in half. But it never came, so he slowly opened his eyes to see someone he was at the moment glad to see. "Are you okay, Inari?" Naruto asked as he held onto the blades between his thumb and index fingers of each of his hands. Naruto saw Inari nod before his focus shifted to the two men struggling in front of him trying to pull their swords out of his grasp. "Inari, close your eyes for a moment," Naruto said, not wanting to let the kid see what was about to take place. Inari complied. Then he heard one of the men ask, "Who are you?" Naruto gave them a sadistic smile before he answered, "You'll never know." "And why?" tried to say the eye-patched man, but his words stopped as he and his partner choked on their own breath due to the incisions on their throat. Deciding to give them a quicker death, Naruto snapped his finger before blue flames shot out from his hands, burning their body in a matter of seconds, leaving no remains. He slowly walked over to unconscious Tsunami, then picked her up before he looked back to see a gaping Komiko. Noticing her surprised stare, he shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly. Looking over at Inari, he saw the kid still had his eyes closed, so he said, "You can open them now, Inari." Inari opened his eyes and looked around for the samurais, but when he didn't see any, he asked, "Hey, what happened to those scary-looking guys?" Naruto thought for a second, trying to come up with something. "Well, you see, they are someplace else thinking about what they did. And I am pretty sure they will never bother you guys again," he expounded with a smile, earning one from Inari. Komiko simply rolled her eyes at the ridiculousness of his explanation to the kid. "Arigato, Naruto.ni.san," Inari yelled, wrapping his arms around Naruto's waist. The blonde returned the hug, chuckling lightly at the kid's exuberance. This was the first time he'd seen the kid excited. "Anyway, you did great out here, kid. If you didn't rush toward them, then I might not have been able to make it in time to save you and your mom." He praised Inari as he ruffled the kid's hair. Inari gave a big grin, which was returned by Naruto before he looked at his female informant, then handed her the sleeping mother on his shoulder. "Look after them both and don't let them out of your sight unless I come back. I need to check what is going on at the bridge. If they send someone here to abduct Tsunami.san, then I am pretty sure Zabuza and his companion will attack today." Naruto finished, earning a nod of understanding from Komiko before he sped toward the bridge. "I wonder if they will take up my offer," Naruto thought as he continued toward his destination. Flashback. During their stay in Tazuna's house, everyone except Naruto got the chance to train. Even Komiko was able to spar with Kurenai and sometimes the Genins, to get them used to a somewhat real battle. So, on the third day of their stay, in order to get some training in, Naruto spent almost a whole day in the middle of a forest doing jutsu training along with physical exercises to the point where he had no energy to even walk back to the house. The next morning, a blonde with scorched black trench coat was leaning by a tree with his eyes closed when they suddenly shot open after he sensed someone nearby. Looking around, He checked his surrounding to see the forest in worse condition than his clothes. It was like a barren land with most of the trees burning in blue flame. Many of the plants died or were in the process of doing so due to the tremendous amount of heat. Looking behind him, he saw a girl around his age, slowly approaching him with a basket that was third of the way filled up with some plants in her left hand. She was wearing a pink kimono with red daffodils sewn into it. Holding it in place was a sash around her waist. What the hell is a civilian doing all the way here? Naruto asked himself while inspecting her closer. Her chakra level was to that of a civilian, but her posture said otherwise. She seemed to have her guard up as she walked toward him. There is no way she is a civilian, Naruto convinced himself. She kept on walking towards him, and when she was close enough, he saw her face. She had an amazing face and a body with all the right curves in all the right places. She had dark brown eyes and black hair that went to her mid-back with a little of her hair in front of her face. He would have blushed if it weren't for the fact that Kurenai looked better in his eyes. "Hello. What are you doing out here in the middle of the forest so early in the morning?" she asked with a small smile. Naruto gave her a sheepish grin, then said, "Ah, I was taking a break from hard night of training. And you, Missa?" "My name is Haku, and you are?" the girl answered and half-asked. "Naruto, Uzumaki Naruto," he answered, causing the girl's eyes to slightly widen, which was immediately noticed by Naruto, causing him to narrow his eyes. "Shit. A Sannin here of all places. I need to inform Zabuza Sama on this matter, but for now, I need to play it cool as not to arouse suspicion." She panicked a little while looking around the premises, inspecting the damage done by Naruto. Even though the bingo book says he is only given the title of Sannin to prove Konoha's superiority, the damage to the forest says otherwise. And what's up with those holes in the trees? Haku thought as she stared at the perfect sphere in the tree as if it was carved or something. "Well, Haku-san, what would a civilian be doing so far away from the village? With Gato around, I wouldn't call this the safest place to be," Naruto asked with a neutral face, bringing her out of her musing. "Picking herbs, Naruto-san," she stated. Naruto gave her a questioning look. "It's to cure injuries and illnesses," she finished with a smile. "Need some help with that?" Naruto proffered the girl, who was now picking up some herbs that were away from most of the heat in the area. She nodded and offered him her thanks. For the next few minutes, both picked out herbs in silence while Naruto watched her through the corner of his eyes to check for any signs that would make her more suspicious than she already was. For a civilian to come out all the way here alone was suspicious enough. Also that she carried herself like a shinobi. Everything else seemed pretty normal. "So, who are these herbs for, Haku-san? If you don't mind me asking," Naruto questioned, wanting to confirm his suspicion. No, not at all. These are for one of my friends who got injured while working on a ship," she lied, sporting a forced smile. Naruto narrowed his eyes. She seems to be lying to him, though why? He would have to find out. "That must be an awful injury if you need so much herbs," Naruto stated. "So tell me, how long is it going to take Zabuza-san to recover with this much medicine?" He finished, only to confirm his suspicion when he saw Haku's body stiffen and saw a slight movement of her hand a second later. Being found out, with a movement of Haku's wrist, she hurled senbons toward Naruto in hopes of disabling him long enough to get away, only for him to disappear for a second before a kunai was placed near her throat courtesy of the Sannin. So fast, Haku thought, staring at the place Naruto was a second ago with wide eyes. Naruto narrowed his eyes once more while standing behind her and spoke in a calm yet deadly voice. "I should kill you right now, Haku-san. You are putting someone important to me in potential danger, but I am willing to let you live if you pass on a message to Zabuza-san for me. Why should I believe anything you say? For all I know, you will follow me after letting me go." Haku spoke with fear present in her voice. "You don't, but what choice do you have at the moment? If I wanted to kill you, I would have done so by now, but that would be a waste of great potential. Which is why I have a proposition for you and Zabuza-san," he said, getting a curious glance from the corner of Haku's eyes, so he continued, "Say, how much is Gato paying you to assassinate the bridge builder?" 20,000 ryo, Haku answered simply. I will triple that each month if you guys become my informants. Along with added protection from me and my other spies, and I'll also get you out of Konoha's bingo book. How does that sound?" Naruto asked, earning a shocked look from Haku. This is what they wanted. Freedom. To be not chased by hunter ninjas from all the villages all the time, and with this, they could also make double what they were earning now without having to kill people. Naruto, seeing her thinking this over, released his kunai from her throat before stepping away from the fake hunter nin. "And if you refuse Naruto blasted Haku with huge amount of killing intent, dropping Haku to her knees, gasping for breath. "You shall perish along with Zabuza. with a dark voice, trying to prove that he was serious. Haku nodded as she struggled to breathe before she shushined out of the clearing. Unknown place in wave. Haku shushined into Zabuza's resting room, catching her breath as sweat glistened down her forehead. It was a killing intent unlike any other she had ever felt, and she could tell he was still holding back on it. "What's wrong, Haku? You seem like you've just seen a ghost," said an injured man who was bandaged to the point where he looked like a mummy, the only uncovered part being his eyes. "We need to talk, Zabuza. Sama," Haku said, looking at the man. End flashback. A few seconds later, Naruto arrived at the bridge to see something that surprised him. The whole bridge was surrounded with mist. He could barely see 1 foot in front of him. The only thing his trained eyes could make out was a dome made completely out of ice. Sounds of fighting could be heard inside the mist, so to clear it up, Naruto brought both his palms out to his side, arm bent in a horse stance, then pushed forth, sending a burst of wind, clearing up the mist, leaving some surprised ninjas. "What the hell?" exclaimed Zabuza as he stared at the blonde figure a few feet away from him and Kakashi. Zabuza yelled, "What the hell?" as he gazed at the blonde figure a short distance from Kakashi and himself. As Naruto turned to face the voice, he noticed Kakashi and a man he assumed to be Zabuza standing motionless. "Beautiful day today, don't you think, Kakashi-san? And you, Zabuza-san?" he asked in a laid-back tone, making both Kakashi and Zabuza perspire. He waved at Kakashi with a smile on his attractive face. Then, with a hidden smirk beneath the bandage covering his face, Zabuza remarked, "I see my reputation precedes me." He then leapt away from Kakashi. Naruto interrupted the bewildered Kakashi, who was within hearing range, and said, "Don't flatter yourself, Zabuza. Anyway, did Haku-san tell you about my generous offer?" Kakashi began to question who the hell was Haku and what sort of agreement Naruto had made with Zabuza. The realization nearly caused him to slap himself. While Hinata and Sakura were defending the bridge builder, Haku, the phony hunter. Nin, was currently engaged in combat with Shino, Kiba, and Sasuke inside the ice dome. Kurenai was fighting a strange guy with an afro on his head when he turned to find her. Not wanting to miss this fascinating discussion, he concentrated on the blonde Sannin and Zabuza because he couldn't understand how Naruto got to know their enemy. Zabuza responded, preparing his Zanbatsu to battle both Naruto and Kakashi, though he wasn't sure if he could defeat Naruto. "Yep, and as pleasant as it sounds, I think I will pass. After all, based on Haku's description, this man must be a very strong shinobi. At least for the time being, just in case things don't work out the way I want them to," Zabuza thought to himself. As he pulled his hands from his pocket, Naruto said simply, "I see. That's a shame since I was serious about the offer. Oh well, it's your funeral." He saw that Kakashi was prepared to battle Zabuza. "Kakashi, why don't you go and help out whomever is in that dome?" "Allow me to persuade my little friend here," Naruto said, receiving a nod from Kakashi, who hurried over to assist his genin team inside the dome. He arrived to find his teammates fighting inside the dome, and Shino outside on the opposite side. They won't be able to hold for very long, based on the current state of affairs. With his visible eye narrowed, Kakashi asked, "Shino, why aren't you helping your teammates in there?" Which caused Shino to turn to face him. It would be lumpish to rush in there without any plan when it's impossible to make a tactical retreat if needed, Kakashi. "Sensei," Shino continued. "Beside, I used Mushi Bunshin no Jutsu, insect clone technique, to help Kiba and Sasuke while I try to think of something to get them out of there," he concluded, inflicting blame on Kakashi for his incorrect assumption. He realized that he appeared to be doing that a lot these days. Upon closer inspection, Kakashi saw that a clone of Shino was inside the rectangular dome, using his bugs to protect the majority of the Senbons, though some managed to infiltrate the bodies of Sasuke and Kiba. Seeing how worn out his familiar was, Kiba suggested, "Take some rest, Akamaru." There was hardly enough chakra left for him to perform 1 or 2 more jutsus. When Kiba scowled at him, Akamaru whimpered in compliance despite his refusal to comply. Before the Inuzuka clan heir took on a more canine appearance, chakra started to emanate from his body after the necessary hand seals were formed. Kiba yelled, "Shikyaku no Jutsu. 4-legged technique," and hurried over to one of the mirrors. Haku thought, he has gotten faster, as she hurled a flurry of senbon at the swiftly moving beast-like creature. Kiba swerved around the jagged needles with greater dexterity and slashed at one of the ice mirrors he thought Haku might be in, causing a large gash. Oh no, before Haku kicked him in the head, sending him flying headfirst into the same mirror and nearly shattering it, he thought frantically, he dodged it. After 2 hits, Haku's eyes widened beneath her mask as she saw the mirror crack. Although that cut was understandable, the mirror ought to have withstood more blows. After applying a small amount of chakra to the broken mirror and avoiding a huge fireball that the red-eyed Uchiha threw at her, she came to the conclusion that something was amiss. There were tiny bugs on the bottom of that specific mirror, but she didn't have time to check what was wrong. Akamaru hurried over to the unconscious Kiba after witnessing his master fall onto the hard pavement. When he noticed blood streaming down Kiba's head, Akamaru snarled in rage and bared his teeth at the several Hakus. He started to run toward one of them, but was stopped when he heard Shino's voice outside. In order to convince the dog to stop, Shino calmly said, "Stop, Akamaru, or you'll end up just like Kiba if you hasten into battles." He gave the dog the order, "Now then, guard Kiba." While his clone kept Haku busy, he looked over a tired Sasuke and said, "Sasuke, do you have enough chakra to do another Kaiten jutsu?" Sasuke nodded his head, not sure where Shino was taking this, but for the time being he would accept any feasible plan. Before bugs began to pour out of his body and startle his conscious teammate, Shino told him, "Good, use it when I tell you to." Kakashi asked the person standing next to Shino, who was focusing on the Aburame, "Are you positive this is gonna work, Shino?" Shino answered, "Hi." He finished stoically, looking at his bugs as they covered the mirrors to prevent Haku from entering, saying, "Sensei, I need you to stand back and only assist if indispensable." Kakashi gave a sympathetic nod. Now that he knew Shino was sure of his strategy, he didn't want to get involved in the Genin's fight unless, of course, they were going to die or something. Although many may find it unconventional for a sensei to allow his students to compete in a potential deathmatch, Kakashi sees it as a means of gauging their present abilities, teamwork, and reaction to a potentially fatal situation because it will be crucial in a few months. Haku was looking at the mirrors in confusion because thousands of bugs were covering them and she was beginning to find them repulsive. She has to deal with these repulsive little creatures covering her iced mirrors for Kami knows what, as if battling a freak show that turns into bugs whenever her attacks hit him wasn't enough. Before they could get to the mirror she was in, she began performing a series of frantic one-handed seals. Then, she yelled, "Hyouden, Tenrai Hyoketsu Kiri no Jutsu, Divine Freezing Mist." A thin, swiftly moving mist formed from the puddles below, and it swiftly swept over all the mirrors and the approaching bugs, freezing them all in place. Basically, it uses water from the air or water source to create a mist that moves like a projectile and swiftly covers the area, freezing everything it comes into contact with. In this instance, it swept over her intended target, freezing the repulsive little insects and reinforcing the mirrors. Haku's eyes widened in surprise as she saw the bugs begin to glow light orange before the added ice began to melt, quickly wiping away the gratifying smile that had adorned her covered face after witnessing the outcome of her jutsu. Bugs shouldn't be able to endure the freezing temperatures, much less melt the ice. Both Kakashi and Sasuke were shocked by the abrupt change in circumstances. When they were all struck by that jutsu, they were fairly certain that the bugs were dead, but that doesn't appear to be the case. While Sasuke was focusing his two-tomoed Sharingan eyes on the bugs he had acquired during this battle, Kakashi turned to Shino for an explanation. He could see that the bugs were infused with some sort of chakra from his bloodline, and that was what appeared to be helping them melt the ice. Unaccustomed to his newfound power, he was unable to identify what it was. These are pronominal colonies of bugs that can be infused with any kinds of chakra manipulation. In this case, I am employing fire manipulation in order to make it more susceptible to freezing temperature. Shino replied simply, "I have been breeding them for over a year now and have been training with them ever since. They are better than your regular bugs that the Aburame clan spawns." After completing his moderate explanation, he turned to face the enemy and adjusted his sunglasses. After nodding, Kakashi turned to face the dome again and saw that the bugs had nearly finished melting the ice. The bugs that had been frozen during their advance at Haku flew at her once more after the ice melted, but this time they were more vigorous, nearly surprising their adversary. As soon as Haku recovered from her shock, she hurried out of the mirror and out of the way of the enraged bugs, who were only a few inches away from her. Shino saw Haku's predicament from outside and declared, "It's showtime." Then, with two kunais in hand, he hurried into the bug-covered dome, leaving an intrigued Kakashi outside to watch how this battle played out. Shino hurled the kunais at an unwary Haku who was still in midair after entering. Shino yelled, "Sasuke, now!" loud enough for Sasuke to hear in his voice. Before beginning to go through hand seals, the genin with the raven hair gave a nod. After completing the required seals, he inhaled deeply and exclaimed, "Kaiten, Housenka no Jutsu, mythical fire phoenix to Kanit," before shooting a barrage of tiny fireballs in Haku's direction, which caused her eyes to widen in terror as they got closer. Alongside Zabuza and Naruto, Zabuza exclaimed, "Cocky brat, aren't you?" before charging at Naruto with remarkable speed. Dodging a swipe from Zabuza's Zanbatsu, Naruto responded, "Nope, just confident in my own skill." Zabuza mocked, pretending to be ignorant, in an attempt to enrage his opponent into making a mistake. "Hey, for someone who got the title of a Sannin due to your apprenticeship to the Hokage, you sure seem to think you could beat one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist." After hearing Zabuza's words, Naruto narrowed his eyes and used his chakra enhanced hand to stop the giant Zanbatsu from cleaving him in half, shocking Zabuza and the 3 onlookers Asakura, Hinata, and the elderly Tazuna. As Zabuza struggled to free his Zanbatsu from Naruto's grasp, Naruto slackly said, Now, Zabuza-san, I can't imagine who would spread such nasty rumors about me, do you? Sweden. Mazarap. Zabuza let go of it after he couldn't get it out of his opponent's grasp and jumped back to put some distance between them before running through a series of hand seals. Naruto appeared behind him with his right foot up, giving Zabuza just enough time to turn around and take a roundhouse kick to the face, which knocked him off his feet and onto the ground. With a barely contained smirk, Naruto taunted, "You know, it's wise to answer when someone asks you a question or otherwise you just might tick off the wrong person." Zabuza growled, holding his jaw from the blow to his face. "Gosh, that hurt." Zabuza thought, "I didn't even get the chance to block it," and got to his feet before taking a defensive position. He snarled, "Gaki, I'll kick your ass for that," and vanished from view. When Naruto noticed the kick coming at a snail's pace, he stood there looking bored. Naruto had only shifted his head to avoid the attack, so Zabuza's foot had lashed out with precise accuracy, catching nothing but the air. Then, using a series of moves that were chained together more quickly than most Junin could react, Zabuza began punching Naruto in the face, missing each blow because Naruto was either dodging or blocking them more quickly than a ninja of Zabuza's level could muster. The former Kiri.Nin snarled and vanished once more, this time emerging behind Naruto, his hand just inches from striking Naruto in the skull. Zabuza's stupidity made Naruto sigh. The guy was outmatched. Couldn't he see that? What makes people so obstinate? As he saw the punch approaching, he asked himself. Naruto vanished with lightning speed and then reappeared next to Zabuza, his fisted hand in a death grip around Zabuza's wrist. So quick. That was the idea that Zabuza and the 3 onlookers were thinking. Naruto said, looking from the Zanbatsu on the ground to Zabuza, who was wide-eyed, "Shay, just as I thought. Although your attacks are sharp and somewhat fast, they become weaker once you're caught. Like a little bird. But I do give you credit for being able to fight with your Zanbatsu. Not an easy feat for a regular ninja." When Naruto applied more pressure to Zabuza's wrist, he moaned, "Arg. This brat, Kuso. Can't I get out? Such strength," he thought, flinching from the agony of being smashed under the Sannin's hold. "Oh shish. I'm going to be struck." Inside his head, he screamed before Naruto landed a knee in his stomach, causing him to cough up blood. His body then sprang back about 20 feet, bouncing like a beach ball from the amazing blow before finally stopping. Naruto approached Zabuza's Zanbatsu and carefully lifted it to inspect it. It was a weapon with a broad, large blade fastened to a long, pole-like hilt. About 15 inches long, the handle was wrapped, and the blade featured a circle-shaped hole in the upper edge and another semicircular hole in the lower edge. It weighed at least 60 pounds. After a few seconds of swinging the blade in various directions, Naruto turned to face the owner of the enormous weapon, who was now sitting crouching and clutching his stomach. Then, startled by the prospect of being struck by a giant blade, he threw it in Zabuza's direction. To his relief, it landed with a thud directly in front of him. Sakura saw Naruto launch the Zanbatsu at a crouching Zabuza and exclaimed, "How the hell can he throw that thing like it's nothing? Shanaru. That should only be possible for Sakuke.kun," Sakura thought inwardly. In the meantime, in the dome, thinking quickly, Haku called forth a water clone to help her move through the air and avoid the kunais and the majority of the fireballs. She was flung through one of the mirrors after one of them managed to get to her abdomen. After being slammed through the now shattered ice mirror, Haku recovered her composure a few seconds later. Before avoiding a flurry of kunai, she took a moment to examine herself to make sure no permanent harm had been done. She tossed a few senbon at the genin in return, avoiding them with ease. After taking a moment to relax, she stopped directing her chakra toward the mirrors, which caused them to shatter. All of the insects then returned to Shino's body through a tiny hole that formed on his skin. She glanced at her opponents, who were huffing. Additionally, she was exhausted from fighting 3 high genin, or possibly low chunin, for a while, and holding the ice mirrors was no easy task. It was also more difficult to fight because she wasn't trying to kill. Sasuke was worn out from fighting for so long, and Shino was worn out because, although these insect colonies were more helpful than his usual ones, they do consume more chakra, and manipulating them was a little expensive for his reserve. With no time to waste, Haku executed one-handed seals with amazing speed before yelling, "Sweden! Mizu no Tatsumaki, tornado of water." A river water vortex on the bridge's bottom was rushing directly at a helpless Sasuke, who could only gaze at the vortex with his Sharingan eyes wide. Another vortex cut off the attack, causing the two jutsu to clash before canceling each other out. Nani? Haku frantically glanced around to see if anyone else was using the same jutsu as her. At that very moment, the Kakashi materialized before Sasuke, his left eye exposed, exposing a 3-tomoed Sharingan eye to the world. She might only be able to perform a few more high-level jutsu before her chakra runs out, so she thought, damn, I don't have the strength to fight him, too. Well, if I hadn't arrived in time, Sasuke would have suffered severe injuries, Kakashi reflected, briefly turning to face Sasuke. Shino was too far away to arrive in time to save him from that destructive jutsu, and he appeared to be on the verge of fainting. Kakashi nodded to Shino and said, "Shino, take Sasuke and Kiba away from here." After shouting, "Oh no, you don't," Haku raced toward Shino, Senbon in hand, prepared to impale the Aburame. Luckily for Shino, when Kunai and Senbon clashed, Kakashi clanged to stop her. Before he leapt back and pulled out some kunai and threw them directly at her, Kakashi said, "I can't let you do that, Haku-san, for I am your opponent from now till the end." Before Haku charged Kakashi and began a taijutsu fight, she had to jump again to avoid another round of kunai that were coming at her. With Naruto, Zabuza stood up to retrieve his sword and muttered, "Damn, where the hell is that bastard?" Zabuza told Naruto, "Gaki, you'll regret giving back my sword, and I swear that I will make you regret it." With a defensive posture, Naruto uttered, "Well then, come on." He hoped Zabuza would fight hard for him. During his 3-year trip, all of his fights were pointless. No ninja could force him to take off his gravity seals. He didn't bother releasing it because he won the majority of his fights with ease. Except for one fight in which he nearly lost his life, but that's a story for another time. He now had to convince Zabuza to come along. Naruto ran to Zabuza's side and attempted a kick to his midsection, but Zabuza's Zanbato's flat side blocked it. A punch to the head was then delivered, but it was ducked. Zabuza used his sword to counterattack with an uppercut, but a simple kunai stopped him. He would have been taken aback if he had had the time, as Naruto kneed him, causing him to skid back. Naruto smiled and said, "Now this is much better, wouldn't you agree, Zabuza-san?" Under the bandage, Zabuza returned the smile. Then Naruto noticed a strong chakra signature close by, followed by mist enveloping the area once more. It was likely at least as large as Zabuza's. Glancing back, he saw dense fog rapidly encircling them. "Is this one of your friends?" he asked, turning to face Zabuza, hoping to make his future spy laugh. "Isn't this mist jutsu getting old? You do know that I could just blow them away again?" The former Mist.Nin remarked, "Haha, not this time, brat." Approaching them, he yelled, "Oi! What the fuck took you so long to Raiga?" As he walked toward Naruto and Zabuza, the newcomer said, "Gomen Zabuza, I got lost on the bridge." When they heard his response, both parties began to perspire profusely. Zabuza slapped his forehead and exclaimed, "Ah!" He was unsure of how to respond to such a stupid thing. Naruto laughed and looked at the approaching silhouetted figure out of the corner of his eye, never taking his gaze off the demon of the mist. "Haha, Zabuza, do you think he'll be of any help to you? He seems to be an idiot. This one seems stronger than Zabuza, I may even need to take things seriously." "Brat, he may sound like an idiot, but when it comes to fighting he is the third strongest in the 7 shinobi. Katana of the Mist. I wouldn't be underestimating him if I were you." Zabuza replied with an understated smirk. Naruto said to Raiga, who was now standing a few feet away from him based on what he could see, "Well then, Raiga-san, I hope you will give me a better fight than your friend." Although the distance between them was reduced, Naruto was still unable to identify Raiga's appearance because the dense mist covered him and everyone else. He was probably only able to see a foot around him, so he was unable to see someone a few feet away. In case his opponents choose to attack first, Naruto placed his hand on the handle of the Muramubi on his back and concluded, "And Zabuza, hopefully you are considering my proposal. You and Haku-san would be of great help to me and Konoha, and of course you guys have many benefits in joining me. Fighting 2 swordsmen without his sword would be difficult." The now confident former Mist.Nin said, "Okay Gaki, tell you what, if you can defeat both me and Raiga, I will think it over. He knew that with Raiga present, he had a better chance of defeating Naruto. Zabuza growled and his partner laughed amusingly when Uzumaki Naruto said, I see, that shouldn't be too hard. An ecstatic Raiga yelled, Zabuza, let's put his foot in his mouth and then bury him alive. Before preparing to battle one of the most formidable ninjas from Konogakure, Zabuza said, sure. Zabuza smiled as she thought, it seems like he still has a fetish for burying people alive. The same old Raiga. Naruto decided that enough bullshit had been said and heard, so he jumped up and performed a quick series of hand seals before stopping and whispering, Fuden. Daitopa. Great breakthrough. Putting his hand to his mouth and releasing a powerful but weak blast of wind that was only meant to dispel the dense fog. This made both of his adversaries aware. Expecting the blast to be powerful, Zabuza and Raiga sent chakra to their sandal soles so they could stay on the bridge. Instead, they encountered a slight wind gust that most likely wouldn't even move a Genin-level ninja. After witnessing the jutsu dispel the fog, Naruto swiftly examined a perplexed Raiga. He had green hair and appeared to be dressed in a long black trench coat with a hood, black trousers, and a pair of shinobi sandals. Additionally, the Mist.Nin was holding two long blades, one toward the top and one toward the bottom, with upward curving blades that protruded from each side by about 5 inches. On his back, beneath the trench coat, there appeared to be something that strangely resembled a bundle of clothing or something similar. The two chakra signatures that Naruto sensed from Raiga, though one was very weak, are what he finds strange. His inspection session was interrupted when he attempted to get a closer look. Zabuza chose to attack when he noticed Naruto momentarily distracted. He swung his Zanbatsu horizontally toward Naruto's midsection, intending to separate his body, as he ran at breakneck speed toward the Sannin. Naruto leapt up to avoid this, and Zabuza missed the swing. With Naruto in the air and unable to dodge, Zabuza was rewarded with another opportunity. At least Zabuza believed that, so he used his Zanbatsu to execute an uppercut. Because the attack was slow, Naruto was able to block it with Muramubi at the last second. Then, he flipped over behind Zabuza by using the force of the blow. Raiga immediately interrupted Naruto's plan to use this opportunity to disable Zabuza by bringing down his swords on the blonde. In order to stop Raiga's attack, Naruto turned and brought Muramubi around. Then, using the force from the pivot, he kicked Zabuza hard, sending him crashing into the bridge railing. In an attempt to lessen the agony he would soon experience, Zabuza drove his Zanbatsu as deeply into the bridge as he could. Fortunately for him, nothing sharp protruded from the railing. Otherwise, he would have been completely destroyed. Zabuza ignored the slight ache in his stomach and back and glanced quickly enough to see Raiga use one of her lightning jutsu on Naruto. Naruto moaned, from the jutsu's electric shock. Even though it lacked strength, it was still strong enough to shake him. He looked at Raiga, who was grinning, and said, I'm guessing he didn't have enough time to power up the jutsu or I would have been fried. Naruto prepared for the impending assaults from both sides. Raiga arrived at Naruto first. Raiga stabbed Naruto in the chest when she got to him, but the blonde swiftly sidestepped the blow. The green-haired swordsman then skidded back after Naruto gave Raiga a front kick. There was a reverse kick that followed, but this time Zabuza was the one who took it. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Shadow clone, Naruto muttered as he performed a ram seal, and then a perfect replica of himself materialized beside him. Then, without giving Raiga and Zabuza enough time to heal, Naruto and the clone hurried them. While Naruto battled Raiga in both taijutsu and kenjutsu, the clone faced off against Zabuza in a taijutsu match. The three onlookers were taken aback when they saw another Naruto appear on the sidelines and confront Zabuza. Hinata's pink-haired partner questioned, Hey Hinata, isn't this the same jutsu Zabuza used when he fought Kakashi, sensei? Unsure of the answer, Hinata looked into the clone using her family's bloodline, the Byakugan, and was shocked by what she discovered. The clone appeared to possess nearly as much chakra as Kakashi did during their previous battle. Not really sure, but probably more so than Kakashi. She shook her head and replied, No Sakura-san, this clone seems to be different. It has its own chakra system, as if it were alive. Not to mention the chakra reserve is huge. She was taken aback by this as well as the fact that the clone seemed to be fighting Zabuza with ease. In relation to Zabuza, he was experiencing difficulties with the clone because he is not a master of taijutsu. Instead, he is sufficiently skilled in ninjutsu and kenjutsu. When the clone was struck by the flat side of his Zanbatsu, it should have dispelled, but to his slight surprise, it immediately rose again. Not to mention that a simple shadow clone hit him himself. Before he performed some hand seals and yelled, Kirigakure no Jutsu. Hidden Mist Technique, Before the fog engulfed his target, Zabuza thought, if I want to win this fight, I have to limit his visibility in order to limit his skill, and I know just the way to do it. Away from Naruto's battle, Hitaki Kakashi and Haku, two copy ninjas, were engaged in hand combat in an attempt to overwhelm one another. In addition to breathing heavily, both appeared to be bruised and battered. They stepped away from one another and inhaled deeply of the clean air. Everyone was trying to find a way to take a break, even if it was just for a short while. While Kakashi used up some of her reserve fighting Zabuza, Haku used up half of it fighting the genin. He was feeling the effects of having the Sharingan activated. She was exhausted, and to her dismay, Haku was getting ready to strike. Nay Haku-san, would you mind telling me what kind of offer Naruto Sama made to you guys? Kakashi interrupted her, much to her relief, hoping to find the answer to his earlier question and divert Haku's attention from the fight for a bit. Little did he know that Haku was also relieved. Taking the necessary break that the Hitaki had inadvertently heard, Haku took her time responding, if you must know, I met him few days ago. Even though he knew my true identity, he decided to spare my life to deliver a message to Zabuza. Sama. He threatened Zabuza. Sama's life and my own if we don't join him. While I thought it was a generous offer considering all the benefits we receive if we were to join him, Zabuza. Sama is not one to take threats lightly. That's actually the reason he decided to go with the original plan, which is to kill the bridge builder, she said. Praying for as much time as possible, she said, now if you excuse me I have to hurry this fight up and help my comrades. Before rushing Kakashi, Haku quickly pulled out a senbon and threw it in his direction. After using a kunai to deflect the projectiles, Kakashi punched and kicked Haku repeatedly. Both appeared to be very focused on their adversary. They both dodged but occasionally managed to get hit. Although Kakashi considered not killing Haku if it could be prevented because Naruto might eventually find use for her, they were doing everything in their power to avoid failing because it would only result in death. Just in case everything works out and nobody gets killed. Haku thought, I wonder how Zabuza, Sama and Raiga, Dono are faring against a Sannin. After catching a glimpse of a lightning strike during their battle. I hope it's better than how I'm handling him. With Naruto, Naruto said, Yar, you sure are one reckless guy aren't you Raiga? After he managed to dodge that enormous lightning strike. I think it's about time I wrap this up for the old man's in this village's sake, Naruto thought, because the bridge won't be able to handle it all at the rate he is shooting out jutsu. Before taking a defensive position, Naruto said, I think it's about time we come to a conclusion to this fight, don't you agree Raiga? Raiga smirked and lowered his swords before responding, hey, if you really want to die so badly. His somewhat insane voice proclaimed, Kirigakure no Jutsu. Hidden mist technique. As he performed a brief series of seals, adding to the mist that Zabuza had previously dispersed, making it difficult for everyone to see even a few inches ahead. Hidden in the rising mist, Raiga yelled, hey Zabuza, did you hear that? It's time to end this now, so step it up and take out that clone already. With a vicious smile that was invisible. Naruto quickly assessed the situation and concluded that he couldn't blow away all of the mist with a jutsu for fear of further damaging the bridge and injuring Tazuna and the genins. In order to see his immediate surroundings, he chose to employ an underpowered Fuden technique to slightly reduce the density of the mist. Naruto whispered, Fuden Ninpo. Kamikaze. Wind style. Godly wind. While performing some quick hand seals. This created pillars of spinning wind that collected the mist before dispersing it. It hurried back to its initial state as soon as it was easier to see through the fog. Zabuza, still fighting the clone, said, that won't work the third time Uzumaki. Recognizing the pointlessness of his action, Naruto gradually increased the frequency of his chakra pulses until he was sending one out every millisecond, serving as a radar to continuously track the location of his opponents. He just needed to concentrate on Raiga. After all, the clone still has enough chakra to last for a long time. Naruto quickly located Raiga and started toward him. As soon as he drew his two short swords, electrical energy started to crackle. Ikadzuchi no Kiba. Lightning Bolt Fang. To summon lightning to strike his opponent, a plume of an electrified chakra. Like essence rose into the clouds above. Before the white lights burst into the sky and fell on the spot where he had been just a moment before, Naruto had plenty of time to notice them. Raiga sent him a lightning strike, but he avoided it and continued on his course. So, he knows where I am too, he thought as he ran, listening for lightning jutsu or anything else that might catch him off guard. I thought Raiga wasn't like Zabuza or other shinobi. Katana of the Mist because they're all pretty good at fighting with the mist technique, but Zabuza is the only one who knows how to kill silently. He frowned inwardly as he recalled feeling a faint chakra signature close to Raiga, wondering if that had anything to do with it. For the time being, he put the issue out of his mind and continued to approach Raiga until he was within close range. Either the information on the bingo book is outdated, or there is something else to this. Now that Raiga was shooting lightning spheres at him, Naruto determined that the best defense against him locking onto his location was to move quickly around him. As he was doing this, he noticed that the subtle chakra signature he had previously sensed was more distinct, indicating that it was close by. He became more aware of his chakra pulse and realized that, whatever this signature was, it appeared to be connected to Raiga, possibly that large bundle he had seen earlier. He decided to take advantage of it and waited for the next attack to occur while taking a closer look at Raiga's silhouetted figure. So that's what that hunch in his back was, Naruto said, narrowing his eyes as a new plan came to him. Raiga's new attack briefly illuminated his form as he charged it up, making it clear to Naruto for a brief moment, but that moment was more than enough for Naruto. With his hands clasped together in a hand seal, Naruto thought, I have to find a weak point and attack it, whatever is underneath that trench coat. To do so while he's facing me might be difficult. It appears that I will need to make that opening. He had the clone circle Raiga in the opposite direction while silently generating a cage bunshin. The blonde took full advantage of the opportunity presented by having two opponents now and having to monitor both. Naruto suddenly materialized behind Raiga, lunging forward with a kick that was aimed directly at the bundle on his back. Raiga whirled to protect himself, but it was too late, and a deafening scream erupted throughout the room. Naruto jumped back, his eyes wide with surprise. His mind racing, he darted from the bundle to Raiga's anguished face, asking himself, what the hell is Raiga doing with a midget attached to his back? Before his jaw fell to the floor and his eyes appeared as though they would burst at any moment, he had a sudden realization. Raiga was shocked and furious as Naruto stumbled, don't tell me why. Why you are a pedophile, and pointed a shaky finger at her. Urusei, exclaimed Raiga. He screamed frantically, Renmara, Renmara, are you okay? Renmara? After a string of coughs, Raiga's crimson-eyed friend, who was on the edge of fainting, whispered softly into her ear, it hurts Raiga. With anger evident in his voice, Raiga yelled, you bastard, I will kill you, as he turned to face a skeptic Naruto. Ikadzuchi no Utage. Lightning bolt feast. Raiga cried out as he brought his swords together once more. Electricity began to flow through the blades. Then, in order to send an electric current hurtling toward Naruto, he implanted his swords into the ground. Oh shish. Naruto pondered. He jumped up, thinking on his feet and returning his attention to the battle. What he had struck had been human, and judging by Raiga's expression, it was significant enough to cause him considerable distress. It could either divert Raiga's attention from the fight or send him into a violent rage, and it appears to be the latter. Raiga hurled lightning jutsu after lightning jutsu fiercely and quickly in Naruto's direction, his anger fortifying him and reviving his almost exhausted chakra reserves. Raiga shouted, Raikyu no jutsu. Lightning ball technique. Raiga combined his two swords to create a ball of electricity, which he threw at one of the Naruto in the hopes of striking the real one. When one of his blows struck Naruto and a moan escaped his target's lips, his insane smile grew wider. Raiga closed his eyes for a moment, enjoying his triumph. However, it was brief because he heard a popping sound and then, out of nowhere, a second Naruto appeared behind him. He then felt as though his shoulder was empty. Raiga's eyes widened as he realized that Renmara was no longer on his back but rather lay motionless in the bag that hides his physical appearance a few feet away. Raiga whirled around with his blades aimed at Naruto's skull, but missed, in an attempt to gain some emotional control. The blonde jumped back to avoid the painful blow when he attempted to knee him in the face. Raiga yelled, Renmara, hang in there, I will help you as soon as I finish up with this bastard. As he followed Naruto and began swinging his swords haphazardly in an attempt to land a blow. After Raiga got upset, Naruto had to start exerting less effort. His judgment is being affected by anger. As the mist began to clear, revealing that Raiga was low on chakra, Naruto came to the conclusion that, at this rate, it won't be much longer until Raiga tires himself out. Naruto lost his footing when he stepped on a fragment of gravel from the bridge that had come loose following one of Raiga's attacks on it while he was retreating from each of her blows. Raiga used this as an opportunity to use both of his weapons on Naruto, who had to use his muscles chakra to block it with Muramubi in order to lessen the damage to his arms. This made him vulnerable to a roundhouse kick that slammed into his face, sending him hurtling backward and crashing onto the bridge. Before standing up, Naruto rubbed his aching cheek, but as he did so, he noticed a flare of murderous intent that was heightened by the chakra pulse off to one side. Both Kurenai's and her opponent's trembling chakra signatures, which appear to be the source of the killer's intent, were detectable to him. He glanced in the direction it had come from and saw something that made him shudder.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.